Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. However you happen to be watching and or listening to this, I want to welcome you to another episode of the Gaming Circle podcast. Episode, what is it, 65 now? We are really climbing. And I won't even attempt to butcher the Portuguese pronunciation of this title. And right off the top, let me give credit where it's due on that real quick for my video listeners and my YouTube watchers who happen to have checked out the coming episode and saw the thumbnail and went, damn, that's a little hard this day. That was brought up as you know, we are a community-driven podcast, and somebody who asked me not to necessarily name them, asked me in the DMs, was like, hey, I have this idea, and kind of talked me through it. Long story short, I came up with the imagery, and they literally added the stop complaining Sony into the thumbnail. So shout out to you, good sir. Thank you so much for the awesome idea. If you have an interesting idea you want me to incorporate into our show, please let me know. I'm happy to do it, especially when it's as salty and as slanderous that befalls the name of the Everborn saga. That was a very salty thumbnail. So I'm grateful for the suggestion. But welcome, everybody.
I just have a question for you. How do you say Everborn was right in Portuguese?
Well, that never happens. So we'll have to discover that. Maybe Cybernox can invent some words for us one day. But speaking of the slanderous conversation, I will first and foremost introduce my co-host, the man who's out here, day by day pining for the day he'll get to play Sonic day one, but still out here trying his best to make sure the Sonic fails so that the overlords are able to take control.
This is what I'm here for. This is what I'm here for. If nothing else, I'm a pragmatist.
Yeah, you're ready to kill the baby if it's necessary. Good day, sir. How's things going, man?
All is well, man. All is well. I can't stay too long today. I got to do some house chores. Yep. But I don't mean I can't stay too long. I'll be here.
We're gonna try and keep it tight.
I'm just saying we can't do a 4-hour joint today.
Indeed. Understood. But you know what? Let us move quickly along and introduce our returning champion. He needs no introduction, but we're giving him one anyway. Whenever you need people to hear, he is the Morgan Freeman of gaming podcasting. Do you disagree, Everborn Saga? Whenever you need intelligent conversation, whenever you need to relay a message in the most even-keeled, normal way, even though you're being ridiculous, you call Morgan Freeman. And you know what? In the Gaming Circle podcast and in the gaming community at large, we end up calling Fuzzy Belvedere. What's going on, good sir?
Yeah, we like to use him for voiceovers for life.
That's right. Exactly.
Thank you.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. It's awesome to be here with you guys. Can't wait to get into these topics, but man, oh man, Twitter's on the verge of a meltdown. So can't wait to get into that too.
Yeah, absolutely. But yes, as Mr. Everborn Saga has said, we're going to try and keep it as brisk as we can this week. So we're going to quickly move along and get it started.
I'm actually trying to get someone in here. I won't say who it is until I get a confirmation. But
fantastic. Oh, the more the merrier, brother. You know how it goes. Let us start with some games we've been playing. Quickly, before we even do that, I will be remiss without pointing out real quick off the top. I see a bunch of folks in the chat already. Thank you guys so much for pulling up, for showing up. Oh, I see a lot of the awesome returning faces. I see Mr. Joanna Dark is already in here. Umbra's in here. Aaron, good morning. So actually, good afternoon. He's in Sweden, if I'm not mistaken, right? So it might be afternoon there. And we have Toolman. We have, so many folks. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. We really appreciate it. If you're new, please hit the like button.
We got somebody coming in. He should be here in about 5 minutes. Look out for him.
Fantastic.
If you know this guy, if you're not following, you should be. Formerly known as Game Logic IQ. Very, very intelligent guy. And if you want to understand how business actually works, he will write you an essay. So
fantastic. No, more the merrier, brother. I welcome new voices. That's great. Awesome. So, okay, before we get started, I quickly must give a shout out to the folks over at Crossfire. So they invited me on the show yesterday. I'm sure you guys know I've been on Crossfire before, but Mooch invited me on the show yesterday to have the conversation as we do, and it was absolutely awesome. legendary folks in there. Of course, the other slanderous one, Mr. Slow-Mo Backslap, was in full effect with his dynamic duo, Forte, and all the great folks were there having the great discussions, and we got into it there. So shout out to Mooch and the Crossfire team, and if y'all haven't checked that out, please do so. It was on yesterday night, and I appreciate them sending the invite. So
was there any yelling or drunken cursing?
There was, as it tends to be, it is Crossfire, so there was some arguments, right? There was some drunkenness, but I don't think it doesn't reach the levels that I think you're talking about. Okay. It was a great show. You had a great time. It was absolutely really, really cool.
I'll do Crossfire one of these days.
Yeah, man. I'm sure he'll put you on there. You just got to get out there and make your opinions known. It was a good show. I really did enjoy myself. But okay. Let us get started real quick.
Episode after Xbox acquires Sega.
Oh boy, you'll do the saltiness. Yes. So, real quick before we get into it, what we've been playing, what you're looking at on your screen right now, for those who are watching, are Moon Scars. For those who have checked it out, new Game Pass, a 2D kind of game, side scroller, as it tends to be these days. The topic du jour, it's very much Souls-like in its implementation. I'm loving the atmosphere. I'm loving the combat, the moment to moment. It's really difficult. It's punishing, but it's punishing if you don't know what you're doing. And every time you fail, it's mud in your eye and not the game, right? So I'm really enjoying what I'm playing with it. It's really interesting in its implementation and how they set the atmosphere. And as you see on the screen, there's like multiple levels of parallax, which really gives it this cool atmosphere that I've been enjoying. Has anybody tried it? I don't know. I'll try. Fuzzy, have you checked this out yet?
Not yet. I do have it downloaded, but I've been like revisiting some of my normal rotation games, but this one's definitely on the to-do list here soon.
Okay. Awesome. How about you, Mr. Everborn Saga? Have you seen this yet?
I've seen it. I've not tried it yet. I am currently back and forth between Grounded, Deathloop, and I've added something new to the rotation, which is Young Souls. Now,
I think I've tried Young Souls. Yeah,
it is really good. The production value is surprisingly high. Made in Unity. They do something super interesting with cell shading that, even though it's sort of 3D models, it makes it look like you're kind of watching an anime with the way they do the facial animations. I don't know what technique they use.
It is beautiful. Absolutely.
It's pretty fantastic. It is, like, as far as I'm into it, I'm not very far into it, but it seems like RPG, like action RPG, but not. But it is gives you like this hack and slash vibe. There's this twin dynamic, so you can switch back and forth between them. It's really, really interesting what they're doing, and I kind of want to find out more about who made it. But it's pretty good so far. I do want to talk about Deathloop for a minute.
Yes,
because and this is not for lack of trying.
You can't get into it.
I don't even know what to do.
Okay, right? How many hours are you in? How much are you?
I don't know. Hold on, I'm gonna check my Xbox stats to tell you.
Well, okay. Here's a quick question. That'll help me. That'll help me determine where you are. Have you gone through the whole cycle at least once?
I've gone through. Well, I don't know what going through the whole cycle means, but
meaning, have you gone through beginning, morning, and night, and then start beginning morning?
I've done a lot of that, right? Okay. So I am now. I found out about Residium. I'm supposed to go and fight the first Visionary.
Okay.
And they told me I need to get some weapon first. I went and got it. It's the double guns that you can attach to each other. But I just feel like aimless when I'm playing it. I don't know. It's not doing the thing that I thought would have grabbed me in by now.
See what I told you last week about it not being an FPS, but it is an FPS? It's not doing the FPS thing well, but it does what it does very well. It's just they don't tell you that. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and here's another thing. I absolutely hate the shooting in it. But I did find something
Not to cut you. We have a guest. Thank you so much for jumping in on such short notice, sir. Thank you so much. Welcome, Hamp. How you doing, man?
What's happening, sir? Oh, you're on mute, sir. You're on mute.
Let me unmute you if I can.
Or no, I think he has to unmute himself.
Yeah, he has to unmute himself. Yes.
Okay, he's coming. But my point is, I just found out you can lock on, like when you left trigger. Yeah. You can kind of use that lock on and actually shoot people. Because I found the controls very slidey. So I use the joystick and then it doesn't stop when I stop.
There's a button. Moving. Are you playing it on Xbox?
I'm playing it on Xbox.
There's specifically on Xbox, there is a setting in the settings that kind of makes controls a little funny, like weird. You have to turn it off, and then all of a sudden it becomes more one-to-one.
What made me that setting? Because I hate like just selecting something
is very annoying.
It's a problem.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. So the best analogy I can give to you to explain why you may be going through what you're going through, remember the Batman Arkham game? Well, remember Batman Arkham in general, where you had to do a lot of investigating, detective work, scan this, scan that. There was a VR game where you had to do that as well, where you literally you became Batman and you're scanning this and you're doing investigation. It seems like Deathloop is very much, it seems to be involved in the detective work of deciphering this mystery, right? Which is a great mystery to decipher. It's fun. I'm as far in as I've gotten, it's really good. It's just, it leaves you to figure it out for yourself. There's not a lot of that hand holding. Hey, this is where you go. This is what you do. The longest day, that first round kind of sets you up and says, this is what you're trying to do. These are the hints. These are the clues you need to follow. Every time you find a new one, it gets added to the list. So it's literally you going into the discoveries in your settings, right? Under the menus and going, oh, I discovered this. I need to go here. But it's like you said, it's very, very much like, here you are. It doesn't hold your hand. It drops you in. And many people have a hard time following the narrative. I completely agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Fuzzy, what do you think? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish.
The other, I just want to talk about Grounded for 30 seconds, but let Fuzzy, and let's introduce Hamp. Let's introduce the man.
Yes. How's the mic working, sir?
Oh, we still can't hear you.
Still muted. Yeah. On our side, it shows that you're not muted, but we still can't hear you. So maybe internally on your side, you're still muted. But go ahead real quick, Everborn.
So
give us the Grounded info, and I'll play some Grounded stuff.
Is interesting. I don't know if it's like a real story there. I know it's a campaign mode, but they kind of drop you in. I don't know how I got shrunk or why. And I kind of feel like it would be much better played with a mouse and keyboard with all the little plants you have to click on or you have to select, because even selecting those, I feel like it's weird to pick up all those little plants.
Yeah, it is a PC game that's been co-opted, that's been kind of converted for controller use, and it works rather well. But I do hear you. PC feels more natural for it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I feel like I'm killing time until Plague's Tale comes out. That's what it feels like I'm doing with these games.
Hey. There will be no disrespecting of Grounded there, sir. A lot of people are super surprised at how well this game is doing, myself included. It is unusually fun. It's just not your stereotypical idea of campaign. We'll talk you through it.
Sir,
it's kind of Minecrafty.
I'm a troglodyte, and I like to hack and slash things. Okay,
it's kind of Minecrafty in its approach, right? It gives you tools and lets you go. If you want to, you can stay on the narrative beaten path. If not, you can go build your McMansion if you want to.
Yeah, that's that the other thing. Once you tell me I got to build stuff, I kind of start.
You don't have to. It's a choice. You don't have
to. I hear you.
But let's try it. Hamp, one more time, sir. Let's see. Are you able to? Let's see if the mic is better now.
Yeah, can you guys hear me now?
Oh, yes, absolutely, sir. Welcome, sir. Yes,
it's the first time.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, this is great. You come highly recommended by the Everborn Saga. He is slanderous, but he is also a man of integrity. So if you come recommended, then we welcome you here, sir.
Yeah, so everybody, if you're not following Hamp on Twitter, give him a follow. The man, if you actually care to understand how business works and you don't attach emotions to corporations, he will tell you how these things work and your feelings be damned. So as long as you have a strong constitution, you can follow this man. He may agree with you sometimes. He may disagree. He and I have not really sparred a little bit, but disagreed in principle versus practicality. But definitely a good follow if you actually care to learn something.
Awesome. I'll make sure I'll grab all your information. We'll put it in the show notes. Make sure folks remember where to find you. That's great to hear. We'll get into the business talk as we go. But real quick, before we move forward, do you have anything else you want to discuss, Everborn, about Grounded?
I do agree that it is fun. I just felt annoyed trying to pick things up. Also, I need to note I have only played this on the Steam Deck via xCloud.
Interesting. Good stuff, sir. Good stuff. Yeah.
And
I hear it shines brighter on multiplayer, on co-op. I hear it shines.
Oh no,
bright
I don't like people. That's never gonna happen. I'm not.
Well, but this is not competitive, man. People help you. Like when you're facing off against that spider by yourself, you're gonna want people.
Yeah,
you're gonna want people around. Trust me. When you face that spider the first time, oh boy. But okay,
I do. So here's my thing with games, and this is why after 500 some odd hours in Destiny, I just had to stop. And the same thing went for No Man's Sky. If there's no actual end to a game, I can't do it. I can't justify that time.
But this one actually has it.
Okay.
It started without it, right? It started in beta form without it. And I played it back then. It was great, people building crazy things. But if you look, especially even as the game starts in the campaign mode, they literally set up this Stranger Things kind of mood for you, and there's an actual throughput. I've seen
there's a beginning, middle, and end, because I'll stick with it if there's a clear ending.
There is a beginning, middle, and an end. How you shrunk, you can get back to normal, the whole deal. There's a beginning, middle, and end.
You know me, I hate these time suck games.
Bro, I'm just like you. If you tell me you can just play endlessly, that means I'll just never play it.
Exactly.
Absolutely. But yes, okay. So I guess this we'll button up the Grounded side of the house and say it's a great game that you didn't know you wanted. It's actually pretty good. I know people that started to put an hour in and they're 40, 50 hours plus in and they're still loving it. I think I even heard Randall Thor talking about it. He loved it. So yeah, folks, if you haven't played it, it's worth a shot. And I hear it's pretty good in co-op.
And the last point, like when I heard Ragnarok, the main campaign is about 20 hours, 40 if you do everything. I was like, you are speaking my goddamn language. 20 hours is something I can commit.
You can do it. That's right. That's a good weekend work right there.
Jobs. I can't be playing a game for 100 hours.
Indeed, sir. Indeed. Absolutely. Well, you know what? Hamp, let's get you in on the conversation a little bit. What games have been keeping you busy? You're a gamer. Where do you tend to game? Where's your preferred platform, if you were, or are you like us? Do you graze across multiples? Well, how you do?
I graze across multiples. I play pretty much everywhere. I will say, so it's a weird thing, right? Because in a lot of the conversations, people tend to express the perspective that gamers go where the games are, but I work in the technology industry. It's important to me. Ecosystem is important to me. When things are kind of when I have 9 things that are the same and then one thing that's different, that's disruptive to me and less comfortable. And I realize it's a not unique perspective, but it's not a common perspective. So I tend to prefer Xbox because it tends to integrate better with my overall ecosystem because I spend a lot of time on Windows, whereas the PlayStation ecosystem is kind of just a little something different. But I love playing games across everything. Most recently I've been playing Halo Infinite multiplayer. So I didn't start season 1. I kind of jumped in and toe dipped and kind of just checked things out and then kind of fell off and didn't come back until a couple of weeks before the start of season 2. So I had to work through the season 1 battle pass, which fortunately you can do with Halo Infinite because it's persistent across multiple seasons, although you can only have one active at one time, which is a little inconvenient, but I kind of understand the ethos, the design ethos behind it. So I've been having done that over, those 3 weeks and part of season 2, I'm trying to wrap up my season 2 battle pass. So I've been having a lot of fun playing that because I do just enjoy kind of mixing it up and being competitive and, the few opportunities that I have to shine, the sun shines on a dog's butt, once a day. So, so I've been playing that. I've been live streaming a couple of recent matches. And then, on my Steam Deck.
Loaded with culture. All right, let's go.
Loaded. I didn't know why we invited him.
Let's go.
So, and I should mention, while everyone makes a comment, the opening introduction was incredibly humbling. I appreciate the lofty commendation. I think, I'm sure we'll get into it at some point here in the podcast. So I think one thing that's important, because everyone kind of mentioned that we kind of butted heads, right, when we were first kind of getting to know each other. And it's bad on me, right? I make a lot of presumptions about where a gamer's coming from based on the little snippets of dialogue that I see. And I am very quick, because I try and keep my timeline efficient. I'm very quick to mute and block people when I see, 2 or 3 iterations of type of content that I don't like. But I will say, right, a big positive dynamic is taking the opportunity and the time to get to know other gamers on social media and understand. I mean, there will be people who will say things, like Everborn or other people that I see that is definitely has malicious intent, right? Trying to kind of be manipulative in their interface with other gamers on social media. But there are a lot of people who that their intent is not malicious; they just don't agree with you. And so it was really fortunate that, and I give Everborn full credit for reaching out to me directly and kind of helping me understand, right, the dynamic that was going on. So I appreciate that. But back to gaming, what I did last night on my Steam Deck was I loaded up Deep Rock Galactic and got back into that, which is, that game has a lot of systems, and so it's a learning curve. And then, on Steam Deck, basically like 90%, like there are games that are compatible and that pass their testing, but 90% of them will have a little mark saying that the game works, but there's something wrong with it. Right. Yeah. And 90% of that time, it's typically like the text is too small or something rather innocuous.
Something stupid. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Something very small. So Deep Rock Galactic is one of those, the text doesn't scale. There's a magnifying mode, but I ignored, it's some kind of goofy button combination press, like the Steam key plus the L1 button or something. So I didn't pay attention to that. So I had it, sitting in a dock, not plugged into any external peripherals. I was using my Xbox Design Labs controller, the one based on like the Series S model, which I have a couple of those. But I was playing with the controller, playing it in docked mode, but not connected to an external monitor. So I had a lot of text to squint and read through. And like I said, that game just has a ton of systems. So I played it last night, but it was really about like trying to get reacclimated with Deep Rock Galactic, and trying to remember how the heck everything works. I got to go back and Google some things and figure out like how do you get them.
When did you first jump into Deep Rock Galactic, by the way? I played that when it was still in beta and it was awesome, but it's I hear a lot has happened since then, right?
So I jumped into it at launch on PC, but I didn't. But again, I toe dip into a lot of things just to get firsthand experience.
You're a grazer like me,
right. So I jumped into it at launch, but I haven't stuck with it. It's kind of in my catalog of stuff that I briefly go back to. But quite honestly, I jumped into a launch on PC. The co-hosts of my podcast played a little bit when it came to console, because that was the first time that they were trying it out. And then it's just been sitting on my list for stuff to get back to. So I haven't spent a lot of time with it. I played maybe like 6 to 10 missions right on the front end, and I spent enough time with it to get familiar with all the systems. But then, like I said, that familiarity is just atrophied over time that I've stepped away.
Are you playing in co-op or solo? I heard it was really best with co-op. Like more folks.
Just one second, guys. Hey, please. You have kind of an echo going on, and I don't know where it's coming from.
Apologies. I'll look into it. Let me poke around here and see what's going on. But please continue. Yes.
Well, one of you guys continue. Sorry.
Go ahead, Hamp.
Yeah, no, I think that's me because I'm wearing my Sennheiser HD 599s, which are actually open back microphones, and then using my dynamic mic. So exactly. I think it's picking up a little feedback.
No worries, brother. No worries.
So I'll try and use some of the studio's echo cancellation and stuff here when I get off the mic. But I've just been playing in solo. So with my co-host, obviously I played in co-op, but I haven't like spent an extensive amount of time like trying to find people to partner up with. I think one of my key things. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, please continue.
I think one of my key things is like Everborn said, like he can't stand certain aspects of gaming, which I think some of the aspects he mentioned are kind of common core elements of live service games. And I enjoy playing a lot of things like that. But one of my requirements is it has to be a game that I can solo queue in. Like I don't mind playing with other people. I don't mind playing with randos. I always,
sir. You're better than me. I can't do it.
I always keep my mic off. I never have my mic open when I'm playing with randos.
Yep. Yeah, I actually think that's a design thing. If a game is good, I should be able to communicate with you effectively without ever turning on my mic. I'm exactly like you in that way. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Hats off to Respawn and Apex Legends for bringing about the ping system that everybody's getting on board with. So yeah, but I've just been playing solo.
You should understand what I do.
I get offended at teabagging in Halo Infinite, but you know what? I flip the switch and now I'm like, if you do it, fine, it's on. just don't be mad when I do it to you.
Exactly.
Absolutely. That's great. Good. Any other games that have been keeping you busy this week, sir?
Just those two, and I went back to Trackmania. So the 2020 release by Ubisoft and Studio Nadeo. Interesting business model because it's a game that you buy and then there's different levels that you can subscribe to, and that gets you access to all of that year's content. Like it's actually pretty amazing from a studio perspective. These guys put out 25 tracks every quarter. That's been going hard for a while now, hasn't it? Right? A couple years. Well, the whole franchise has been around for probably like 10 years or more. This iteration is actually technically a remake of Trackmania Nations, I think, but it's in this. It's on modern technology and now it's in the subscription model. But you get if you subscribe to the year, you get access to all the tracks, and then you then permanently have access to them as well. And then you have access, obviously, to creator-made content, as well as seasonal content and like tracks of the day that they make up. Now they say you have to be subscribed to retain persistent access to those tracks. But like, I went back to like tracks that came out in 2021 and I still have access to them. So there's even beyond, what they say is the baseline. I still think you have access to certain content. It may not like track all your records and some other kind of nitnoid stuff, but it's really amazing for people who are fans of, either, racing games or kind of, like the stunt kind of racing games like Ollie Ollie World or Trials. Or things like that, things that are oriented around, not so much real world, like open track racing on like official tracks, but like kind of these stunt kind of games that are oriented around like achievements or kudos or, whatever you want to call them. So I've been having fun going back to that as well. And been playing that on PC.
Nice. Absolutely. That's awesome. That's very cool. Fuzzy, before we move into the stories for real, he said racing games, and that gave me a quick little, I needed to have a quick chat with you, sir, because we saw, and I may change, and I'm pulling a quick audible because I wanted to get your opinion real quick before we move to the stories broadly. But we saw Need for Speed get announced this week. And the racing guru that I know better than most is Fuzzy Belvedere. What was your opinion on that? I was super excited with what I saw. What are your thoughts?
See, I was a little bit nervous when I think Jeff Grubb had mentioned something about like an anime type of aesthetic to it. And I'm like, maybe it'll work out. Hopefully it's like more on the lines of like what Street Fighter with maybe the colors or things like that when you make contact or when you do specials. But I'm happily surprised on how good it looked, as well as the fit for not just the location, the cars, but the overall aesthetic of the game. I actually dig that whole setup. Like I at first, I know somebody made like a little joke video where it was like you could hear almost like the Looney Tunes like running animation in the background. But what I saw for the actual unveiling of the game was like spot on what I could only dream of kind of thing. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to start off with the 10-hour trial a couple of days early, or the 2 days or 3 days early. But I'm probably going to wind up buying the $80 edition because I think I get like 10% off because of EA Play with the Game Pass Ultimate subscription. But I'm hoping they continue to support it, not unlike what they did with Heat. I think Heat kind of had support for like that first year and a half or so, and then it kind of fell off a map type of deal. So as long as they continue to support with adding maybe updated wheels, updated cars, updated exhaust, things like that, I'm all for it. But I'm going to wind up buying it, shortly after day one anyway. So I can't
forgive me, folks. StreamYard just kicked me out and said something went wrong for some odd reason. They just kicked me out, but I am back.
You don't belong here, sir.
Yeah. We don't like what you're saying, sir. You don't belong. Okay. Let me set this up real quick, and we'll get into the show proper. But yeah, so I hear what you're saying, Fuzzy. I really saw this thing, and I was like, yo, this is something we need to talk about because like I feel like it's the Fast and Furious game we've always kind of wanted but never got. You know, with a little bit of the swag and the style and the underground, the Need for Speed Underground little bit, it really, I posted on Twitter. I was like, I thought the days of Need for Speed being something to look out for and be excited about was over, but this changed my mind. This is pretty cool. Like any other thoughts? I'll go to you, Everborn. Did you see this?
I actually did not see this yet. I heard everybody talking about it. But I'm not, and I apologize in advance, Fuzzy.
You're not a racing guy?
I don't care. I just don't care. It could be great. Like, I played Forza Horizon 5 for about 45 minutes, and I was like, this looks beautiful. Okay, I'm done now. I'm good.
I'm not a completionist there, but I'm kind of with you. Like I've checked every single Forza record, like every time I've played Forza, right? And I play every single one. And I play until I don't feel like playing anymore, and then I move on, or a game gets in my way, then I move on. And every stat I've checked of Forza, I'm about 10 and a half hours. I don't know how that happens. It happened in 3, it happened in 4.
That's the limit.
I get out of the car and shoot people? If that answer is no, I'm probably not going to play.
Next.
Well, since everybody here likes Need for Speed, you guys are welcome to use me to replace Everborn Saga.
Anytime, good sir.
So we can have an all racing.
Oh my god,
here.
Brother! I hear kindred spirit talk right now. Everborn can be muted. It's good.
Well, not to make Everborn a car enthusiast, but driving a Tesla, have you taken it to a drag strip?
Yeah. Every time I drive, I'm on a drag strip. God damn it.
No, but there's going to be a special feeling that you get. Like, I'm pretty sure you love being at like stoplights and somebody with like a muscle car or something like that tries to rev, and you're like, no, not today.
Funny enough, it's always the Civics that do that. I don't know why.
The Civics are I was more of a muscle car guy, and Civics are always going to be your nemesis to some extent as far as always bothering you. But the next one down from there are minivans. Not knocking anybody that has a minivan.
Yes.
It's the guy in the minivan that's like, damn it, I got all these kids and I got this minivan. I wanted that muscle car, but you know what? I got a gas pedal and I'm gonna floor it type of thing. So me and my Camaro, or when I had my Mustang.
Eclipse. I had Eclipse, so that was a different conversation.
But this is the thing about Fuzzy Belvedere's on something. People in minivans don't want to feel like they gave up on life, so they try to prove it at every stoplight. Quarter mile at a time.
Stop. We have 84 people in here. I will take a pause and I will say the views of Everborn Saga do not are expressed or not representative of the Gaming Circle podcast.
Everborn Saga.
We do not hate on minivan drivers here, sir.
I said what I said.
Indeed. Before as you can see, we're getting into the show proper. Please hit that like button if you haven't done so. 80 some odd folks in here. We appreciate you being here. If you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. But let's jump into this thing properly, okay? So we have been having these conversations as the weeks have gone on. Regulatory bodies are talking, and PlayStation's moving here, Xbox is moving there. Lots of interesting things to go around. And myself and Everborn Saga have been basically calling the shot, saying, hey, we foresee a day soon to come where launchers become the next battleground. And I'm bringing this specific story up here because I see this as the toe being dipped in the water that's heading in that direction. I don't know if you guys got a chance to hear this. They are as the news broke, it's basically they're specifically pointing out Spider-Man here, but I thought I heard them say that it will retroactively be added to not Ragnarok, but the original God of War, which is also on PC, as well as
it'll get added to Ragnarok.
We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. I know you want to have that conversation. We're getting there. Give me a minute. So it will be added to the OG God of War, and it's also going to retroactively be added to Horizon as well. And what is it? For now, it's just, hey, just like Ubisoft does, just like EA does, just like a few of the others do, we're asking you to sign up to your network, to the network, and unlike them, we won't do, for now, no progression saves, no cross save, nothing that matters to you necessarily when it comes to that. But they promise to give you trinkets. So with the case of Spider-Man, I think they give you extra suits, things like that. I know that they're planning on doing similarly on the other games as well. So I guess I'll start with you, Everborn. What do you think? Where are we in the timeline of we think PC is useless to here's our launcher? Where are we here?
I think of PC like I think about Thanos in Endgame, where he says, "You couldn't live with your failure, so where's that brought you? Back to me." No, it's not a failure. This is actually a good thing. But I think this is good. I think it's a first step, but I think ultimately where this ends is PlayStation will have their own launcher, because while Steam is the number one sort of store for gaming, I mean, technically the Windows stores is bigger, but not really for gaming. You still have to pay Steam a cut just by including your game in that store. And I think once they get these pipelines in place, and PlayStation is taking like this measured approach to moving towards PC, which I think we'll talk about later with Herman Holtz. But I can't see this ending anywhere else but a launcher where they will have their own store. And hopefully this will allow them to do things like cross-buy, because people say, well, why can't they do cross-buy? Xbox is doing cross-buy. Xbox doesn't have cross-buy with Steam, I don't think, right?
No,
because
right.
So if you're going to do something like cross-buy, cross-progression, it's really going to have to be through that launcher, and I think that will sort of widen their base one day. So this is only good news to me, and even if it takes them a while to get there, as long as they're going in that direction, I think it's a great thing.
Absolutely.
So we'll see. But again, this is really nothing, right? It's not cross progression.
It's not really serious. All you get, and just to show that off real quick, all you're getting here is you're getting a couple skill points, you're getting a different weapon, you're getting a different suit. Nothing that you need per se, but it's kind of an interesting perk to try and get you to sign up. It's their way of going, how many people actually are invested in our platform and our games on the PC? And this may give them that.
Right. So you're saying this is more like a data play almost, just to give them some analytics to understand.
Yes. Even though they, of course, have analytics already anyway, because as you play the game, they're pulling that data. But this is to kind of gauge how many fans on the PC side do they have? Because you have to be a fan to then go and sign up with your network and blah, blah, blah. This will tell them, hey, not only are they playing it, but they have PlayStation accounts, meaning they are PlayStation players. How many of those Steam players are also PlayStation users? Right, this will tell them that. We shall see what this means. Right, it'll be interesting to see what this then manifests into once they realize that, hey, we got a big contingent of PC also PlayStation players in our ecosystem.
So what? And I'm sorry about that.
Oh, please,
God damn it.
Yeah.
Right,
Everborn technologist not knowing.
No. Blame the Mac. Because the Mac is ringing, because the phone is ringing, and the phone is silenced. And anyway, but no.
Ecosystem lock-in. I hear you. Go ahead. Continue.
My point is, I said slow-mo in the house. We'll see what kind of shit he's going to talk today.
Hey now. That's your one. Continue.
So my question is, what if we forget about where they're going? Yeah. What data can they glean? What is the benefit of knowing that your PlayStation players are also playing on Steam? What can you do with that?
I mean, they don't know that I double dip, right? They don't know that. They don't know that I own the original God of War, like on my PS4. I played it on PS5, and I also have the PC version that I play on my Steam Deck. They don't know that, and knowing that might then entice them to go, hey, we have a player, we have a gamer that is in these two ecosystems. Maybe we can leverage that somehow, I suspect, and to answer your question more directly, I suspect that once they have that telemetry and they know it, then you might start seeing, depending on the numbers, you might start seeing add-ons to their premium tiers and whatnot to probably entice PC players to also tap into it. Because if there's a good enough market, why not?
So, okay, I understand. So maybe, and you guys can, I want you guys to weigh in if you can. Maybe knowing how many people are double dipping on the PC tells them or gives them some indication of how
shout out to Kirby Louise.
What does he say here? How much overlap?
They know they're supposed to stop making PS5 consoles.
That's kind of where I was going, not to stop making PS consoles, but that does tell you
where
how
the priorities
soon
lie,
or how much of a benefit it is to do to launch on PC closer to the launch date. How many new players is this bringing in?
Yes. And not to cut you real quick, because Slow-Mo is here and Slow-Mo was on that show yesterday with me. We had this exact discussion on Crossfire yesterday, and of course, folks were those who love their PlayStation platforms were staunch in saying that they're only going to do it for a year. And obviously some were pushing back. Yeah, before that, they didn't even say a year.
How much of the clown makeup
this tells them how much they can change.
That? Did they have the wig or the nose on yet when they said only a year, or was it? Okay. All right, sorry.
But to that question, to that conversation we were having, this directly changes that. Because if you say, "Oh yeah, we're doing a year," great, and then they say a year at least, because I've been told that you have to add the at least because he said that, right? Because people want to make sure it's not a year, it's at least a year. Okay, but in that world where they then ask for telemetry, we give it to them, and they see, wow, there's a lot of gamers on this side. There's a lot of people who like to play on this side, more and more as we're going along. That may change the equation of the year, right? Because there's a lot more to serve there. There's a lot more money on that table than we thought initially. It's just a thought, but please, Hamp.
And I wouldn't necessarily take any of those predictions off the table, but to attempt to mollify the PlayStation console alarmists. I would also consider that it's not necessarily a preordained fate either, right? Like putting a launcher. So I don't know that I would. My initial entering assumption would be, Steam data analytics hoovers up a certain amount of data, and some subset of that data can be provided to devs and publishers. I think my hypothesis would be that that's not necessarily in real time, that there might be a time delay, that you may get a monthly dump, that maybe it goes to a data lake and you can go get it from there, whatever, right? But
this man is speaking my tech language, bro. Keep talking. Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
But putting a launcher right on the PC allows you access to that data, probably in real time, probably much closer to the metal, probably gives you at least the ability to determine exactly what you want to hoover in terms of analytics, right? The data points that you receive from Valve may not be exactly what you want.
As dynamic as you want. That's right.
Right. Exactly. And it may be, a pain in the butt to tailor them to your specific desires.
When do you want it? How do you want it? What details do you want? All that gets determined by you when you own the launcher.
Methodology, right? Like if you don't have the data in the way you want it, you can't make the right decisions.
That's right. Determinations. Exactly. No, that's a very good point. Very good point. And all that seems to be, possibly where they're heading here. Hamp. Please continue.
Yeah, and so obviously everybody's putting their launcher on. It doesn't always necessarily require a login. So, for example, the Bethesda launcher, the 2K launcher, those things pop when I bring those games up, but they don't necessarily implore you to create an account and log in. They're an optional thing. Right. Yeah. And then the last thing I'll mention again, like I said, to mollify the PlayStation alarmists, right? I would say, not a preordained fate, meaning those things could be used for that purpose, but also the way of the entire technology industry, and I would call Google, a big proponent of this and maybe a pioneer of it to a certain extent, is very, very, very often software companies will just hoover up data with no direct intent on how it is to be applied.
They just want to use it. They just want to have it.
They'll harvest the data and they'll say, you know what, we'll figure out exactly what we're going to do with it or how to play with it later. A lot of it, when you talk about, how analytics and then, machine learning can go hand in hand with that in terms of offering deep insights, right? Is many times companies don't know how they want to use it because they don't know what what they're going to extract from it, right? In terms of those deep insights. Those deep insights then reveal themselves over time, and then they make a determination on what that data means and how they should be applied.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely right. Quick analogy to that. When Microsoft initially put all their cloud saves, when they integrated Azure into the 360, that was not the world where they knew they'd be leveraging it across Game Pass and all these other things. But they built that infrastructure to one day be able to make use of it in another way later. And here we are benefiting from that. So absolutely, yeah. And honestly, I think this is great. I want a world where PlayStation, goes beyond just their small pond and just like, I like that idea of, I was saying this yesterday on the show as well. Record players still exist. It didn't disappear when CDs showed up. They're hard to find, but if you want one, you can find one, right? Yeah. There's no way that PlayStation is leaving us, and there's a world where it's just software. There will always be a need for some hardware if you want it, right? I will always be the one that refuses to watch The Matrix on Netflix. I need to break out the Blu-ray for that, right? There's always that. Yeah, if you want your method to be the only method and the tip of the spear, and that's the popular method, you might get upset by that. But it'll always exist in some form for you to enjoy if that's what you care about. What do you think?
For the enthusiasts type of thing.
Yeah, maybe for the enthusiast. Exactly. Everborn Saga. Oh, actually, you know what? Fuzzy, let me get your thoughts on here. I'm sure you saw all of this. You've been part of the conversation. Boom. You're on Boom shows. You're on. Shout out to Boom. Shout out to Mav and all the great shows you're on. You've been having great conversations about this. When you saw this happen, what was your initial reading of the situation?
I'm actually looking forward to, the whole service game stuff makes sense because you want the biggest player base from get-go type of thing. So the day and date for those made total sense. I've said ever since GT 7 came out, I would have loved to have had that on PC. Now, I'm not going to go as far to say I'll double dip if you offer it separate and I have to pay another $80 or whatever for the deluxe edition to get all the cars and whatnot. I don't know if I'll go that far just yet, but to me, having a PC alternative for some of the games is like a go-to. Like for me, PC gaming is primarily for modded games. So like a God of War, the Homer Simpson thing. I know everybody laughs at it, but it's like stuff like that is fun. So that's why I game on my PC mainly. Like
you want ray tracing, glorious ray tracing on Halo Infinite or any Halo game, buy a PC. You can definitely do it there.
And if you want to cheat,
there's also that. There's also hey, stop the slander because there are a lot
that was specifically for Slow-Mo.
Well, but Slow-Mo and I had that conversation yesterday as well. There are the console cheaters every day. Stop the slander.
Okay, in the same way you say that buying Bungie and buying Activision are two completely different things because of an orders of magnitude. Don't bring up console cheating to PC cheating because it's not the same thing.
Just because y'all ain't got the skills for it doesn't mean.
Okay. All right. That's it.
Yeah, you guys
my case, Your Honor.
You guys already get aim assist, and then on top of that, you got to cheat. Like, come on.
Exactly. Bro.
Extra aim assist. Yeah. No, but with the whole PC transition that they're doing, I think it makes sense. Like a lot of people used to talk about the cannibalization of like the player base because of the overlap, and even me as someone that has both a PlayStation and a PC, sure there'll be overlap to some extent in my part of town, but it's one of those things where I'm more than likely going to buy certain titles twice if they don't do a like a dual entitlement type of thing, kind of like what Microsoft does with their Microsoft Store. Like for me, what Microsoft does is awesome because buying Flight Sim on PC automatically gave it to me on console. No matter if I, canceled my Game Pass subscription type of deal. So having that dual ownership and having options of where I want to play, if I want to play it on the PC, on the smaller screen, or on the big screen in the living room or something along those lines, it's the options are perfect. But I think as time goes on, that at least a year is going to probably start narrowing. Hopefully. The analytics that they get from, linking the account shows that you're not going to lose out on as much sales as you might if you have it within 6 months, as opposed to waiting the full 12 months. Or if it eventually gets to the point where it's day and date, where, okay, there's just a single player component, but the people that bought God of War, 4 years or however many years, I think it was like, what was it? God of War was what, 6 years or 8 years from
Yeah,
when
I
it
think
was originally released, type of thing.
2018 was the original version, and it came out in 2022.
Okay, so with that amount of time, if they look at the grand scheme of things, they may be able to get more players buying it closer to day one as opposed to 4 years down the road. Because at that point, like with a PC player, they're going to move on to something else. Like if what's the talking point about or focus game is going to be God of War, everybody might be willing to jump in. I mean, look at Elden Ring. The FOMO was real as far as with everybody, posting screenshots and video clips and talking about it. And even those that weren't really into that genre jumped on, or a lot more than what would normally be expected. So if you have a PC game or PlayStation game that's on PC at the same time, you might have a similar effect where the PC guy that's not caring or looking at buying a console or anything console related, but there's buzz generated about this game, you stand a better chance at grabbing their dollars as opposed to 4 years down the road when you're still trying to charge a full price tag on it.
Such a perfect point. I said this on Crossfire yesterday. I'll let you speak, everyone. Absolutely perfect point. I was saying that to them. Oh, the PC players will enjoy having it 4 years or 6 years. They'll take it and they'll enjoy it, is what I was told. And I'm like, yeah, that's because they've been used to playing PC games, and PlayStation games have never been part of the equation. If you start all of a sudden cultivating them and they start seeing that it's valuable and it's worth their money, and you start cultivating them as gamers, and then all of a sudden you go, oh, the next iteration you have to wait 4 years before the console players get there first, you're going to alienate that subset you're trying to cultivate. And there's no way that's going to last. So the idea that today it's a year at least, it's going to get closer and closer, because there's a lot more potential PC gamers than there are console gamers, and as the money rises, they will want to respect those gamers more.
Yeah,
please, everyone.
So it's a few layers to it, and I think part of the delay you're seeing is a transfer or transition of positioning their sort of business model around an ecosystem versus gravitating around the content, right? So this is why they're making these service games, and they will, as they sort of expand past hardware lock-in of a console to try to control an ecosystem where they take a piece of everything you buy, which is that's fine, that's the model. But that model has not proven to really have, like, revenues have grown, but the way revenues have grown have not necessarily been by increasing the user base. It is sort of an inward of microtransactions and all those other things that have led to a lot of those increases. And because of that, if you cannot, basically what I'm saying is they have not expanded the market for consoles. And I don't just mean them, I mean the console market as a
in
whole
general
has not expanded. So but we've it seems as though they've been shielded from that because revenues have gone up because of the advent of microtransactions and things like that. So I think the next growth vector is expanding the base. And if you can't do that through selling more consoles than traditionally you've been able to do in the past 20 years, you do that by expanding
you turn the platform into an entry point into the platform, which is whatever hardware you've got, whether it's a console or a PC or wherever else.
Right. You have trained your audience to kind of center everything around this box, and the console war,
and that's why they're having a very difficult time.
I don't know if they're having a difficult time. I actually think they're moving people, because listen, people, as much as they like to pretend they do, people like consumers. They don't like change, right?
True.
They're moving them along and slowly moving the Overton window of what is sort of acceptable for those customers. So,
and thank you, sir, for threading the needle to our next story. Keep going.
Yes. So they're sort of moving them along so that when it happens in full force, they're able to do it. And the reason they don't just rip the Band-Aid off, I think it's their development pipeline. Their development pipeline and all their tools are solely, or historically have solely been based around the hardware that they produce. And as they want to be able to sort of release on other platforms like the PC, you have to change that around. I think that's why they brought Nixus in, and I think their tools over time will be upgraded, and those things will happen.
It's a good point. Let me add one thing to your point real quick. Did you know that their development pipeline, by and large, is based off of Linux backend? I did not know that. I was not aware of their development pipeline, by and large, is based on Linux backend.
Yes.
So that's the reason. Like, I was always wondering, why is it so difficult for them to pivot to PC platform development? It's because they really didn't know how. Like, it's surprising to me that it's taken them this long to go, hey, let's delve into the other ecosystem that's massive that for now we haven't been in. It's so interesting. Like, I was stunned to hear basically that's why they have not jumped in before, because they were like, well, that's Microsoft's platform, PC, so we're not going there. They sold Vio and they were done with it. Crazy to me.
You don't want to pay those licensing fees, but again, it does make me wonder, and maybe this is a little bit too much conflation on my part, but doesn't that make Sony good bedfellows with Google Stadia test?
Yes, that's why I said that. Absolutely. So that means PlayStation games run easier on Stadia.
Not necessarily, but I feel like it could be less work. I don't know, because I haven't used
we haven't done the logistics of it. I mean, and of course, then you have Valve over here, so like putting the entire ecosystem on its head and going, here's Proton. Now it doesn't really matter. You know what I'm saying?
Well, just to decompose those a little more. I don't know that I would that I reach as far for the Google thing. So PlayStation.
BSD. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The big difference between right. So somebody's saying BSD. So the big. I think that the larger, the more important component of the difference is that Microsoft's abstraction layer, right, is DirectX. And so when it is developing a game for deployment on Xbox or developing a game for deployment on PC, they are using that same abstraction layer. And so in many ways, the only real delta is hardware optimization, right? Whereas Sony's pipeline uses a common abstraction layer that all of their studios utilize, is based on OpenGL. And so when they move to port a thing to PC, they have to switch that abstraction layer, right? So that doesn't necessarily help them in converting a thing over for utilization on Stadia, right? Depending on those abstraction layers. And Stadia would have some other impediments associated with it in terms of just how that content is served out.
Porting and all of that.
Right. So so at the end of the day, I mean, I do agree with what you guys said, right? That the way, what I've been talking about the last few weeks is that businesses in general don't spend a lot of gray matter and hyper focus on overly serving a consumer base that they already own, right?
You're in pocket. You're in pocket. We're moving on. That's right.
What's always the focus is, how do I reach the next set of customers, right? Now, interesting enough, obviously Microsoft's corporate strategy, when you talk about their entire product base, right, under Nadella, has been shifting towards a platform agnostic sell-through of software, right? And Satya said, I don't really care, right? And this is why, they got out of Windows Phone and stopped the hyper focus necessarily on Windows.
Every time you see Windows Phone around here, we need to stop. That's right. I was about to say, every time anybody says Windows Phone on this show, we must pause for a moment of silence. Okay, continue.
Absolutely. I had a bucket of Windows phones. I loved that platform.
Oh my God.
Just one thing. You know how everybody made fun of the Lumia 1020 for the big hump it had on the back? And now look at these goddamn phones.
Yeah.
Look at them. Look at this. Look at this nonsense.
Everybody's chasing that camera, and in fact, that camera still competes with a lot of cameras on phones that
to
are
this
coming out
day.
today.
Yes. Of the Lumia flagship is still one of the best, because it had like actual optics and it wasn't depending too much on the software. Yeah, absolutely. But please continue. Yes.
So Microsoft has now a longer duration of history where it has been trying to move in that direction and trying to access those customers because they made that decision a long time ago. They gave up the ghost on Microsoft Office. They said, hey, look, we don't really care where you run Microsoft Office, whether you run it on a Mac or whatever.
No sacred cows.
Right. They stopped the constantly warring with Apple over them reverse engineering, the Microsoft Office document format, right, and just started supporting all those platforms. So they've been moving in that direction for a while. PlayStation has things it has to do, right, in terms of a lift of effort to start to move in that direction. What'll be curious to, obviously the conversation is really about how vigorously they approach that, and I think that's what all the controversy and all of the vitriol is about, right?
Yep. And how they handle that in the PR space and the messaging and all of that.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
What's super interesting, and actually just this morning, this new tilt to the theory kind of occurred to me, because I have been one of these staunch people that said, look, Microsoft said a while that it's trying to access the additional 2 billion plus gamers on the planet that can't afford the $500 entry fee to step over the broomstick and enter the console gaming consumption market, right? You have multiple gamers in countries who just can't afford that. You have gamers in this country that can't afford that. So that's a barrier to entry for those consumers. And they've been trying to move in directions that allow them to access it. And I have long been of the theory that eventually that's where PlayStation would also have to compete, right? Trying to access those same customers. However, Everborn's phone going off and his reference to the Mac caused me to step back and kind of rethink about it a little bit.
Because
here we go.
Because Brat mentioned last night the analogy to Apple, which is one that I've always drawn. You go back to the 90s and you talk about Sony, and I'm a staunch, my camera of choice is typically a Sony camera, right? The Alpha series. But I remember in the 90s, right? The big thing when we all came of age and left college was your big purchase, right? Or that you bought at college, right? Was your stereo component system, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And the war back then was always between Sony components, right? And Yamaha and Denon.
See, and I'm from the old. I'll even go back before that and go. Trinitron was life, baby. Trinitron was life. But
absolutely. And
I'm an Onkyo man myself. But.
and Sony actually had its own stores, right? When I think in the early 2000s, it tried to move again in the Apple-esque direction that Apple had gone with its retail stores, and so. They always kind of regard themselves as that premium brand, as that luxury brand. Yep. And so when you look at Apple doesn't do what Microsoft has done. You can't run Mac Doodly on any hardware platform other than an Apple platform. Without hacking it and doing workarounds.
My machine runs it really well.
Right. But the official company line is, right, our stuff runs on our hardware. And that has actually worked very well for them to the tune of a few $1 trillion, right? That keeps them in the big five. And so it's curious, right? And then you talk about, right, one of the things with the gaming industry is it's extremely software driven, more so than hardware, whereas Apple's revenue model is highly driven by hardware, very high margins on its hardware. However, the overall level of effort to create an app, right? Because the App Store is their other big get. In fact, it's such a big get that it keeps them in the top 10 of gaming companies that earn 65% of the revenue in the gaming market, right? Apple and Google are in that body of 10.
Quietly, like in the top 10, and people don't even realize that.
Exactly, because they don't make any games. It's just off of their 30% cut from the App Store.
Hey, right? Can I add something to that real quick? And I think that's one why people thought Satya Nadella was disingenuous when he said 4 or 5 based on how you count. And I think he was including Google and Apple in that. But the other point, which when you bring up those revenues that Google and Apple make, I think that is partly to do with the fate of Stadia. And I'll thread that needle very quickly because I don't want to step on Hamp's toes in his point here. I think that the reason you didn't see Google invest in content acquisition the way we thought that they should if they were serious about this is because why would they? Because if you see where all the growth, or not all of it, but the majority of the growth in the gaming industry, it is mobile, and that happens through 2 stores.
And they
Google
literally
and
sit
Apple.
back and they collect the check. They do nothing to get it.
So I
Absolutely
don't
nothing.
think their mindset is around
Yes.
we need to spend $100 billion to compete in this space.
They don't need the
because if all the
R&D
growth,
headaches. Absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
Microsoft doesn't have a mobile store because, as we said, they failed in Windows Phone. So, but if you have that store and all the growth is in mobile and you get a 30% cut of all that growth, how do you sell to your shareholders that we need to spend $100 billion?
Set up in the morning, get up and go do R&D for new consoles, new hardware. Nah, forget about it. Just sit back. You're collecting the check. You are in the top 10 of the conversation without doing a thing. Absolutely. Yes.
Until those stores get disrupted.
Yeah.
Until the stores get disrupted. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, sorry.
Hemp, finish your point,
I took
please.
us into another.
No, you're absolutely right. But yes, Hemp, please finish up. Yeah, and we'll move on to this story.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think I was pretty much that. I mean, I think the thing that will be curious, right? The other shoe to see if it drops is, does PlayStation not go down that same pathway as Microsoft in trying to reach all those customers, and does it take a more Apple-esque approach to doubling down on hardware, high margins? Lots of complaints about the price increases in other markets outside of America, but again, if you're running a high margin hardware business, are looking at running a higher margin hardware business, that would speak to that strategy. So, games are not the low level of effort sometimes that an app is, right? In most cases, you don't code a game by yourself with a single developer, right? Which is apps just kind of proliferate, right? In the millions and billions of numbers. Games don't, in terms of games that are actually profitable. And so the software level of effort is higher, the investment required is higher, the demands from gamers is higher. I wrote about this on Twitter earlier this week, right? Gamers are constantly asking for more. Kayasani and I have sat here and talked about, the indies that we love, but in general, when you look at gamers keep wanting more AAA, more Bloom effect, more ray tracing, bigger games, companies trying to keep up with that, bigger budgets, bigger teams, right? Constantly trying to top the next thing that's done. That becomes will eventually become a downward spiraling self-destructive cycle. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of the consolidation. So it'll be interesting to see how PlayStation goes about it and see if they stay more so on the hardware-oriented path and less of the service-oriented path, and still kind of try and focus on keeping that premium content on hardware that they own.
So
Absolutely.
this is not really a counterpoint, but it's I think it's something that should be noted. I think Apple's model I think how we would classify Apple's model is sort of vertical integration, but I think that only works if you have you're able to increase the amount of hardware that you sell. And I don't know that 100 million number where Sony sort of lies around, if they are able to
increase
significantly grow and do vertical integration, unless they can find a way to increase that. So,
and you know what? To your point, everyone, I was going to push back on his Sony point, on his Apple point with that a little bit because of that. They say they want to do that and they speak to it, and the PR is all about it. But as you can see, the growth in the background is not there, and everything they do seems to be suggesting they're following Microsoft's path. So it seems like it's lip service more than anything else. So, but is it? I know, is it Microsoft's path, or is it just the logical path of cloud gaming? Right. Yes. That has already been the I know Microsoft got there first. I'm not taking that away from them. I'm just saying it's just a path that has already been blazed. Could it ever go anywhere else? Exactly.
Well, it seems like Sony. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ham.
Well, when we see the hardware diversification of the PlayStation platform, and I'm sitting here playing on my PlayStation deck, then we'll just have to revisit this whole theory.
And before we, please, Fuzzy, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, along with like kind of what Hamp was saying, as far as like if they were to make something like a portable, like a Steam Deck type of device, or even just have it where they have a better integration so you can do the remote play, they would also need to look back at some of the areas that they kind of let their top tier status kind of drop a bit. Look back at the TVs. Like if you're going to have Microsoft with
Fuzzy. It looks like we lost Hamp and Kay Asante. So we're running the show, man.
Well,
and just one thing, Pixel, first mover advantage. So to be fair, I guess you do have to give it to Microsoft's path. Yes.
Freaking StreamYard, man. What is going on today? They just keep going. We have some issues. Goodbye.
All
Anyway,
right, Fuzzy, continue. Sorry.
please continue.
No, I was going to say, with possibly, like, if they were to refocus some of their efforts on their TVs, so you could have kind of like what Xbox is going to have with Game Pass being on like a Samsung or LG TV, have their PlayStation app on their PlayStation TVs, their Bravia TVs, and so forth, and double down on that, as well as their monitor line that they have for PC. Another thing that I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that PSVR 2 is out of the box, compatible with PC, because what better way to kind of blend the lines than to have something that's not just solely used on your one box, but can be used on other boxes as well.
Keep
as far
talking
as
there,
PC.
Fuzzy. We are switching to the next topic, which is PSVR 2 planning to. They think they're planning to produce 2 million units at launch, with the pricing that we're not sure of, and the increase of the established console that's been increased. They're thinking 2 million units first round. Please continue. Good threading of the needle, sir. Continue speaking.
Yeah, with like hardware like that, they definitely have the potential. So they could find a way to expand that player base by some of the items that they are either working on currently or things that they've had in their wheelhouse before, and just kind of focus back on it a bit more. I mean, I know like their PC line that they used to offer doesn't get as well received as it once had. But was it Vivo or Vivio?
Vio. Yeah, they sold it off, or like I think a Chinese company owns that brand now. Yeah.
Great.
But I mean, they have been like dipping their toes back into the PC market with headsets, premium headsets, and monitors and things. So what is it, the End Zone or whatever the branding, which is like ridiculous in my humble opinion. But they tend to make good hardware. So if that heads in the Vio direction, there is a case to be made that one of these days you'll see them as an actual player in that market. They tend to make good hardware. So
here's a question.
That is a good point. Go ahead.
Here's a question. What I think would be a super interesting vector for Sony to go down: making a gaming PC.
Yeah. Yeah. Like a gaming PC where they partner with a bunch of different
maybe a gaming PC with a custom GPU that supports their PlayStation stuff.
Yeah, that would be a real Apple move, and I'm not sure they're ready for that. They need a big R&D uplift for that.
I think as long as the price is capped under 2,000 or preferably like 1,500, I think that would have legs.
Well, but what I mean by they don't have the uplift is not necessarily to the consumer, but more their R&D to lay the groundwork to be.
But they've hardware. They've already made PCs, right?
No, I get it, but you're talking about a GPU and like specifically a GPU, like custom GPU. That is a tough sell. Intel, who's been in this game for years, has still not been able to crack that nut. They are now trying, little by little. It's tough out there. They could do everything else, but I suspect they'd still have to leverage like the vendors in the environment they're already.
Sure. I'll give you that. I just think it'd be an interesting growth path for them. Because,
I agree on that 100%. Yeah.
If you're selling your own PC, just the name alone. Remember the Steam machines? That used to be a thing.
Yes,
they're
still a thing, sir. Yes. They're still a thing. They're just in a different iteration.
I'm not saying there is any indication that they would do this. I think it would be super interesting, and I do think it would sell a lot to people who maybe aren't into PC gaming. If this was like a PlayStation PC, right? I think that would do well off of the name recognition alone. And it would be interesting. So like Hamp said,
I'm sorry, just real quick. While you're speaking, I want you to also talk to the idea of, now you and I have been talking about this, about the whole price subsidizing and the PSVR 2, and you think the pricing, right? And now with the pricing, you and I still having that debate of where the pricing will fall.
$349.
I think that is ridiculous. And like this, I will give you credit though. We're making 2 million units at launch speaks to the fact that they want to subsidize the price, because why would you be telegraphing that you're making so many if you're planning on releasing it for $600? I get you on that, but still there's a lot of money on the table, And I don't think Sony's the kind of team that goes, yeah, we'll just take the money hit, but we'll gain the PR win on that one. They won't do that.
You're not going to make 2 million units of something that you don't
and then sell for $600. Yes.
Right?
Yes. So that works to your point. I will give you that. That tells me that they're thinking about pricing it aggressively, because how can you sell 2 million units if you don't price it aggressively?
And remember, this is something that basically if they want to do 2 million at launch, that means that they want to hit the PlayStation's at what, 20 something million now, low 20 millions, right? So you're just under 10% of your addressable market. You want to get, right? So I don't think that they can realistically charge $500 for this thing if they expect to sell 2 million of them at
absolutely
launch.
On that we agree. I still don't think that it'll be cheap. I don't think that it'll be as cost effective as they should make it, but I do agree that if this is right, then both can exist. You're either selling a premium product, or you're selling a device that's priced to move in a fledgling gaming space, right? So they know, obviously, they recognize that PSVR is still on the cusp. They can still come and take over. Obviously, Meta's out here, but nobody wants Meta. Meta is just here because we have no other choice. So clearly, if PlayStation gave you a good option, I'm sure they would strike at that, but people would. But still, the company that I've come to know as Sony, they're not as consumed with PR wins as they are with bottom line dollar wins, right? But let's change this up a little bit. Hamp, let me go to you on this one. I'm not sure how well versed you are in the world of the VR space and all of that, but I've always been under the assumption that it will be I don't know about $600, but it won't be $250. It won't be $350. And if it is, it'll be in pieces $350 that when you bring together end up almost $4 or almost $5. That's where I think it'll be. But where I think their PR win might go, where they might be able to save face, is going, hey, by the way, this is USB-C, so it also functions on PC. Where do you think this whole thing goes?
So just to start off, and I'd say I'm pretty well versed in VR.
Awesome!
I've got an Oculus Rift.
OG Rift?
That's
no,
awesome. I can't remember. Is it the R or the S?
Oh, the S. You got the S. Okay.
Yeah, so I
had the OG Rift. Yeah.
Yep. So I've got a Rift S. I've got an HTC Vive, and I have an Acer Windows mixed reality headset as well. So I used to do a VR podcast a year or two ago.
After my own heart. Welcome, sir. This is great. I have an index back here. I'm in love with VR.
Did I just bring in my own replacement?
You just brought in the replacement, homie. So much intelligence and just a little less slander. This is just so nice. Oh my God. Continue, sir.
So pretty well versed, but I will say all 3 of those units are over there in my utility room in deep storage,
and you don't use them
because they don't get used. So my feeling of where PlayStation VR 2 is going, I don't think it's going to be compatible on PC. We just talked about how there are differences in abstraction layers and the increased level of effort that you would have in development to make them compatible. I also think you have a lot of movement and a lot more complexity in that market on the PC side, through which really, I mean, if you're going to do VR on PC, you're inherently going to do it through Valve. I mean, that's where Steam is where you're going to have to go. And so dealing with where standards are falling, and common approaches are falling between Windows mixed reality, which is less of a thing now, Oculus and Vive, and now Valve making their own headset. That's just a industry collaborative environment that I wouldn't want to be bothered with, which I think is why they're building PSVR with it in their locked ecosystem entirely on their hardware and their platform, where it can be highly optimized. Where I think this thing's probably going to be more expensive than $349. I completely agree with you, Kay, in terms of, by the time let's remember PSVR 1, right, which was just a flipping consumer confusion tragedy, right, with I got to buy
weird controllers that we were not going to talk about right now because it's like a PG-13 show.
Like that thing made my eyes bleed, and I wasn't even interested in buying it, right? Yes. Controllers, camera, all sorts of different packaging and SKUs, and you can buy it 59 different ways, right? And yes, I'm exaggerating because I always do with high numbers, but but my point is, I think they're going to try and simplify how this thing is sold. And so it's just going to be PSVR 2, the whole thing, headset and controllers. And then the only other option I think to buy it will be in a bundle with PlayStation 5. And I think that's where you will see the pricing subsidies, right?
Yes.
It'll be, let's just say for a WAG number, it's going to be $399, $450, right? But if you buy it in conjunction with a PlayStation 5, which, since those are also there's a lot of scarcity going on with those, you're going to be able to buy them through PlayStation Direct bundled with a PS5. There's going to be a certain numbers that are set aside and reserved to be sold right in that specific SKU configuration.
So you think what, $900, $800 for both?
Uh,
Under 1,000.
Under 1,000, yeah, under 1,000. I think whatever MSRP is for the VR2 unit, I think the subsidy in buying that in a bundle will be they'll take $100 off the VR2 unit.
Yeah. I see that. Yeah.
You know, now as far as what they're doing about volume, so this is what I'll say. I don't expect those 2 million units to sell through like hotcakes. Again, right, you're looking at selling to people who either already have the PS5, so a relatively small number, right, in comparison to other user bases, legacy user bases, or people who want to get one, but like we've said, right, it's hard to find. So I actually think those 2 million units are going to come out. They're going to go into the supply chain and they're going to sit there for a certain period of time. I don't think they're going to
go to scalpers.
Right. Yeah, I don't think they're going to sell through, right, like hotcakes, and they're going to be, they'll still be hard to find, but because they're going to go to a certain limited number of retail outlets. But I don't think that we're going to see a huge ramp up towards production on these things, because again, the addressable market I think on them is limited. What I've referred to before is not only the interest level, the fact that there's not really we talked about Deep Rock Galactic just a little while ago, right? And live service games, and the point of those games and why there's huge uptake in them is because you can get into those games and you can live with them, right? Everybody here knows Forte, right? Forte lives in Destiny 2, right? People go into those games and they live in them and they spend a lot of time in them. You don't have that type of a title, right, in VR, and you don't have that type of title on PSVR 2. And when there is a title that could potentially support it, you don't have the user base for it. So I don't necessarily think that the sell through on these things is going to be high. I don't think we're going to see a huge ramp up to where they're making more and more and more and more of these. I think they're always going to sell to a limited part of a subset of the PlayStation install base.
No, I think it's a very good point you make. Absolutely. So before we move forward, let me just take a reading of the room and the chat. What price point, Fuzzy, would it be? Okay, I'm buying this.
For me to buy it, it's got to be 400 or less. But my gut's telling me it's going to be over 500, or it's going to be at least 500, if not more. Like I think the package deal of a digital PS5 in this is $1,000, and I think the disc one in this is 1,100. And
oh my god,
I know we're going to sit up here and look at it as that's they're pricing themselves out of the market, but I think they will at least get through those first million pretty quickly. Depending on, it's going to be early after the holiday, so we're figuring March of next year. Yeah. By that point when they launch it, so I would say by, let's say, June, at least 1 million of them are in customer hands or in scalper basements or what have you type of thing. But okay. I think
I will get the last two of your opinions on this as well. But real quick, since we're already in tech talk, I kind of there was something just kind of dropped, and I want to have a quick chat about it. So what do y'all think of this one as well?
Uh-oh.
And for audio listeners who are not paying attention, a friend of the community, friend of all of gaming communities here, Jez Corden from Windows Central has just posted a big tweet saying, "If you're interested in the Logitech G Cloud, don't. There's something better on the way."
That sucks for all the people that pre-ordered that.
Right? Just kind of dropped real quick and kind of put the kibosh in everybody's way who are excited about this G Cloud. but continue. I'm sorry.
It reminds me of that Saturday Night Live skit where Kenan Thompson was playing Big Papi. And he's talking about a depression ad. And he's like, "Why are you sad for? Don't."
Absolutely. So Did anybody in this panel, like, was anybody excited for this device?
Nobody
I kind
was
of wanted to
excited
get
for
one
this
cheap.
device.
I was
Nobody
excited until I heard the price.
Okay.
If it was,
does this change it for you? This whole don't?
No, because I already have my Steam Deck. So
Mhm.
that was the thing. Like if this G Cloud deal was going to be like 200 or less, even that's still high for what it is. Well, not for the components, but for what I would use it for.
Mhm.
I would say 200 was like my max price that I'd be willing to pay, like a date or day one type of thing. But if something better is on the way, hopefully it's better in not just capability but pricing. But
Yeah.
I know Razer has something coming. I don't know if he's referring to that
with Verizon, like combined with Verizon and tagging, adding the millimeter wave 5G signals as well to it. Which I mean, if you're building a cloud based gaming console, you'd want to be accessible wherever possible, and at least in the United States, Verizon is the best option available there. So it's an interesting turn of events.
I want to repeat my line about this from last week, because I do think there's a market there. I believe that the way you sell these cloud only devices is not by selling them as a cloud only device. I think you have to sell it as a mobile gaming device. I think there's a market for a high-end tablet with built-in controls, and you're not selling it as cloud only, but you're selling it as a high-end mobile device that is gaming first.
Yeah. So I mean, that's what the Logitech G Cloud is. Do you mean it? Sell it?
But no, but it's not high-end though, right? Like, so if I want to play, is that thing really going to be able to handle Genshin Impact?
Yes, but at very low frame rates. You like,
that's what I mean.
The best thing about that G Cloud is all of its benchmarks have already been done, because there's a phone that is literally this device.
But
same
that
CPU,
phone
same
is
GPU,
not a high-end phone though, right? That's not
exactly.
a high-end. I think you need one.
It was mid-range 2 years ago.
Right. I think you need to make one of these that is a high-end mobile device. Same thing, but you pitch it as a high-end mobile device. So you're using this thing as a tablet that has all the benefits of mobile gaming, but with the controller built in. And I think that's how you sell this thing, because $349 doesn't work for a mid-range or low-end mobile chip. I think you need whatever the latest Snapdragon is in there. And then you can sell this thing. And you can even sell it for $500 at that point, because it's not cloud only. You can play all your local mobile games. But again, the best way for this thing, I think the pricing structure for that was all wrong. You can, if Microsoft needs to make one of these, I think, for it to work, and it needs to be either subsidized through the fact that you're bringing people into the ecosystems and you have other ways of making up that cost, or you sell it at least a price where you can make a couple of dollars off of it, but you subsidize it to the customer through the all access program. I don't think it's going to be easy for a third party to make one of these where cloud is the sole focus. If they can make one where it's a high-end gaming tablet writ large, that's where I see the market. But that's just
the only problem that I hear your point, but the only problem to that is it would have to be an Android tablet, because they really wouldn't work as an iOS tablet. But in the Android space, they don't really speak to high-end games in that store. Like, because of just the nature of that store, that high-end premium stuff hasn't really like made its appearance. Google has tried, though. They've done the Apple Arcade thing where they've tried to cultivate and give you a subscription service that gives you those core games. But Apple Arcade has succeeded far more in the perception that, hey, you can get real games there than on Android. You know what I mean?
Could you imagine something with the specs of an iPad Air or the 8-inch or 9-inch iPad Pro?
Let us not make a mistake real quick. Let us not make a mistake real quick. Yes, you pointed out the iPad Air. I think I saw a recent thing where it's hard to do, but they were able to like put some emulation stuff on the M1 based iPad Air. I mean, even the best Android tablets on the market cannot compete with that M1 processor and its emulation capabilities. It is insane. If only they could shave iOS away and let that device shine for how it's supposed to. The only thing stopping it is iOS. That hardware, that chip is so performant. It beats almost anything on Android's blocked. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
The problem with a lot of these scenarios is they cut in the opposite direction of what Fuzzy brought up, right? Which is I hear what you're saying, Everborn, right? But the Asus ROG Phone 5 is an $800 device, right? So anything that cuts in that high end is going to be even higher than the Logitech G Cloud, right? And so and on top of that, I think the only real addressable market for this type of device is East Asia and places outside of the US that are gadget fanatics. And I know people believe that we're gadget fanatics in the West, but we ain't gadget fanatics like East Asia is.
Nothing compared to them, yes.
Over there, that's a market where people who have a phone, right? People who have a high-end phone will not have any problem going out and getting
and buying another
G Cloud because in a lot of cases, a lot of them are sold cheaper. And there are also knockoffs that are available that don't necessarily have the branding. Looking obviously where Jez works and where he typically gets insider information from, there's a good chance that this is a Windows focused device. But the whole problem with this market, right, as Fuzzy said, right, the pricing on the Logitech G Cloud was already too high. There was an amazingly skinny space between that device and the Steam Deck, right? And the problem even with the Logitech G Cloud, where it bumps up against the lower end price of the Steam Deck, I'm like, why would you buy that instead of the Steam Deck? It's a more capable device. So where are you going to price and deploy this thing in the, what is there, like maybe $50 of space between that and the low end Steam Deck? I think the low end Steam Deck is $399, right? 64 gig. So I just don't know where you go. Where the theory Everborn had, I think, is the way it could be sold, which is it's an Xbox branded device. It is subsidized. You get some type of price knocking off because you're on Game Pass, or it's sold via All Access, or there's some other type of benefit that makes the price a little more digestible for the market. But then on top of that, what's the addressable market for that? 50 million people, roughly 50 to 60. And who are those 50 to 60 million people? Those are the diehard Xboxers who bought a Xbox One at, right, knowing that they sold about half of those, right, 1 to 2 in comparison to the PlayStation 4. So those hardcore who still bought that device and still lived in that ecosystem, right, are probably the maximum number of people, right, that you could buy because they're the hardcore. But then you knock some of them off who still aren't gonna, right, swallow that price depending on how much this device is. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. I don't really know how this thing really works well in the pricing that it is, at least for Western markets.
It is definitely a niche within a niche. That's for sure. That is definitely for sure. And I for one appreciate that they keep stabbing at this, right? They keep trying to enter this market because there is a world you have to, and I should give credit to the people who pointed that out initially. In order to get to a place where this is ubiquitous, we have to go through this, right? We have to have some devices that are almost hits in order to optimize and find where the addressable market really fits. So I still say
Apple is going to come in with an overpriced
and go, guess what we've discovered? We've invented this new thing. Amazing.
Hey, bring Steven Elop back and let him run the Xbox mobile gaming devices division.
Well, I'm kind of wondering from an Xbox standpoint, remember how they had the B&O headset that was like an official licensed Xbox product? I'm surprised considering how open Steam was with their Steam Deck as far as the tech and stuff, that they don't
surprised they haven't had a branded one
by Xbox Steam Deck.
Well, what I will say, and this is no insider information on my part, but Microsoft has already even said it. They've telegraphed that, hey, we're letting you, we're showing you how to kind of give you the best quote unquote Game Pass experience on Steam Deck right now, while we're working on a more permanent solution, which is what they said.
Yeah,
right. They said that specifically, which means it could be an app or it could be a branded device that has the blah blah blah. It could be.
I want a Windows-based Steam Deck.
Well, isn't that officially supported now? Right, when it first came out, Windows on Steam Deck was kind of like you could do on your own as a gray market. But I think there's official support for that on the Valve website.
You can't dual boot it yet, but you can install it. Yeah.
Hamp, this is something you don't know about me. I work with technology, doing cloud migrations and stuff in my day job. I don't want to think about any technology when I'm not working. So
he does his best to act like a troglodyte when the tech's not
plug and play when I'm not at work. I don't nothing.
Even though he's as much of a technologist as I am.
But I do want to add though, Steven Elop is the Phil Harrison of tech.
Ooh.
Oh boy. I
absolutely agree with it.
The Grim Reaper.
We didn't talk about Stadia, but half the reason for Stadia, in my opinion, is that Phil Harrison sold Google a bad bill of goods. But that's another topic.
So he's like, what was it, Agent 47? Send him. Absolutely.
He's the closer. Okay. Closes the doors after he gets hired. Yeah.
See, and my question is, Google just had one mistake after another, right? And forgive me here. They had Harrison and they had Jade Raymond in the same place at the same time for a short amount of time. Like you just want electricity to just strike you on all fronts at this point, right? And that's basically what happened to them. But okay,
I think highly of Jade, but I mean, is it the reality?
Too. I do too.
The reality of her track record is that she hasn't built and shipped anything since Assassin's
Creed.
Yeah,
absolutely. So it's just it's one of those things. What are you gonna do? All right, let's get into a big story. But let me pause real quick and once again thank all the fine people that are in here. We are at 110 folks on here, and for such a small channel, that is huge milestones. Thank you guys so much for being here.
How many likes do we have?
Yes, that is a good question. If the likes ratio isn't up to snuff, please help us correct that. Hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed, think about it. We're marching towards 1,000 subscribers. As the holiday season comes, you're going to see some changes in this channel. You're going to see we're doing some giveaways, some interesting things here and there. But it will be fun. We're marching towards the future, and you guys are helping us do that. So thank you guys so much. Let's talk about the reason why we're here, right? And the reason for the slanderous headline and the thumbnails and all of this, right? We have been talking about these balls and strikes with this Blizzard thing for quite some time now, right? As of course this is, and I like that we have our show after all has been said and done, because then we can kind of sit down, let the dust settle, and really take stock of what's exactly going on, right? Right when it came out, people were just really hot, right? Twitter was all ablaze, everything. See, I'm sitting here having a conversation, and Suicide King's in the chat is doing his best to derail me, and he was successful. Slander time. Yes, thank you, Suicide King.
That's what I'm here for.
Thank you. But okay, so here we are, Brazil and Saudi Arabia approved it some weeks ago, but Brazil has now approved the ABK deal with no concessions at all, right? There's a lot of conversation that's been had about it. They took pains. Well, it looks like they took pleasure in basically ripping everyone who was misinformed apart their statement.
Before you continue, I just want to shout out to 108 Dragons in the chat.
Oh yeah, yes.
Thank you for joining us, gentlemen.
Indeed. I mean, so many great content creators and community members in here. We really appreciate you guys joining us and being a part of this community. It's always great to see folks in the chat that we respect and look up to so much. So thank you guys for being here. But let me start. I think I'll say the last word for you, Everborn, because I know you have a lot to say about this, and folks want to hear what you have to say. I will start. Let's start with Fuzzy. Let's just start right off the top, right? They got this done, right? Brazil approved it, and it seems like Brazil has been listening to podcasts, because they approved it and they put beautiful legalese on a lot of very, very, very tumultuous, salty topics, right? They basically went in and piece by piece dismantled a lot of arguments in their conclusion, right? I've heard a lot been said that, ultimately it won't matter because every single jurisdiction, every single regulatory body is responsible for their own. And by and large, if you see how they're talking about it, they're approaching it each from a different avenue. Some people are focused on cloud, others are focused on console, others are focused on gaming market and all of this, right? And it's very specific to each of their own markets, right? But long story short, they approved it. And by and large, you see all the some of the conversations here. There are others that have been talked about that really go hard at in certain instances what the CMA was saying, what Sony is saying, obviously, but here we are. Off the top, do you think this will matter in the long run? Does this change any equation, or is this is just one of those 1 of 20 or whatever, and we're moving forward for Microsoft? What do you think?
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I think it's 1 of 20, but I think with having the documentation out there, it at least has there's the ability for people to get eyes on it, whether it has to go to court with the CMA or the FTC or anything along those lines down the road. There's at least one regulatory body that at least put the time and effort into researching it from a couple of different angles, and they came out with some great talking points to kind of counter some of the, I guess, the original complaints that Sony or Jim Ryan had in reference to the acquisition. So, will it change anything for the FTC or CMA? Probably not, but at least for some of at least the interns of the regulators, they could at least come across this, and it can be brought to the table when, things like concessions come up, or as far as any negotiations that may be necessary, and some back and forth questions as far as when they want more info. There's at least this out there on the internet, and in documentation out there for some people to at least research or look on to, I guess, get a little bit more insight. So it may not directly affect, but it will be some help, even if it has to go to court down the road.
I am just surprised.
Well, hold on. One second.
Decision on their website.
one second, everybody. Not yet. They probably will, but 1 second. I will say, because this man mentioned Jim Ryan, and this is all jokes, but I love it every time these days. Every time somebody says Jim Ryan, people come out with the with the names that are included. My favorite so far, and I saw this yesterday by the man who's in the chat right now. Shout out to Mr. Gerald Mack. What does it say? It's Jim crying, dance moves, lying, jumping on planes, flying, trying to stop Xbox from buying Ryan.
That's good. That's actually very good.
Great, bro. I'm sorry. I had to just speak on that real quick. Shout out to you, good sir. That must have taken some effort. Everborn Saga. Well, no, Hamp. Let's go to you next. Let's go to you next, sir. I'm sure, as I've seen you've been really thinking deep about these thoughts about how the balls and strikes go here, and clearly, if you care anything about this, you've been paying close attention. When you saw this, what did this do for you? Did you go, this is just another one of those, where there's still a lot to go, or did this matter to you?
Overall, I mean, it's a shoulder shrug for me. I'm not sure that I really expected anything different out of Brazil, who has been fairly supportive of lots of technology footprints in Brazil because they need it as part of their infrastructure and their commercial makeup. I don't know that, when I think about the FTC and I think about Lina Khan, I don't know that any number of countries that support it really make any difference to her. She's going to make her own call.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, the other thing I should mention, actually, before we get too much further, so two countries have approved the acquisition now. Saudi Arabia was actually the first, and Brazil is the second. But by the same token, I also don't throw any shade at Jim Ryan. Jim Ryan is doing exactly what I would expect the CEO of PlayStation
he's supposed to do. Absolutely.
Right? That's what he gets paid for. In fact, I mean, he could be called into question by the board of directors. In fact, kind of the SEC, if he were just to roll over and let this happen. So
I think he would be fired, honestly, if he did nothing.
Absolutely. So,
but that doesn't mean we're not going to make fun of him.
True. That. I get it. So I mean, I just think, I mean, you can count this as another chip on your bingo card, right? As we watch how the dominoes fall on this. At the end of the day, what's going to matter is if one country where they have a significant economic footprint in their incorporation, right, such as the United States, decides that something has to be done in the structure of the deal in order for it to go through. And so, 39 dominoes could fall, right? But if Lina Khan stands up and says, absolutely not, right, something's got to give, then they're going to have to do something about the way that deal's structured, in as much as how they operate in the United States. And just like, we have California emissions, and what happens with all the car manufacturers, they all have
to deal with it.
Exactly. Because they're not going to make, 500 cars to ship to California and then make everything else available to ship everywhere else.
And a quick aside, that is why I'm so happy at the EU's decision about the USB-C. Yeah. But let's continue. Good. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, and what I do like, or what I do come alongside in terms of Brazil's rationale is, what I've said is, I said, look, if you just simply take a snapshot view and look at the last fiscal year's revenue between Activision and Microsoft, and you combine them, let's just make a linear calculation, it puts them $1 or $2 billion ahead of Sony. If Microsoft does take Call of Duty exclusive. Again, let's just use some really basic, simple linear math. Let's say that they cut Activision Blizzard revenue in half, or take a couple million off for what goes to a couple billion off for what goes to Sony. Whatever you want to do, that doesn't do anything but put them at parity with Sony, maybe a skosh below. So the mathematical reality of even taking Sony's 12 live service action games that they actively have in production to compete head to head theoretically against Call of Duty doesn't really move the needle, just puts them at parity. Again, we've talked about there are 10 companies that make 65% of the revenue right in the gaming market. The only thing that we're doing is we're taking number 5-ish and moving them up to second or third, and everybody else still stays in the pool.
Exactly the same they were. Yep.
Right. So I also, we've seen a lot of things thrown in this mix about, what's going on with Bethesda. Again, because Bethesda was a private company and so their financials were not publicly available. Again, there's not really firm knowledge and awareness. That company was only valuated at a total of like 2.5 billion, like 4 to 5 years before the acquisition went down. So I don't know that Bethesda was a really big needle mover, right, in terms of overall revenue generated in the industry. Sure, those games were popular. That doesn't necessarily always translate to dollars for me.
People are very gamer focused, and because of that, it makes it such a big deal when it doesn't really move much in the dollars and cents. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So I think Brazil's call is, I won't qualify any of these calls as good or bad. I think it's a rational call that makes mathematical sense to me. And subjectively, as you extrapolate that math across what the competitive impacts are on the industry, seems to make sense past the smell test. So, I'm fine with it.
Okay. So Everborn, I will let you speak. I want you to tell me basically, because you've been prognosticating on this topic for quite some time on this show and elsewhere, right? Like, I'll give you my small take on this perch. As Hamp has said, and I completely agree with him. Saudi Arabia, you can shoe that real quick. Why? Because it's Saudi Arabia. They have skin in the game. There's rumors of how much money they'll make when this deal closes. So they don't really matter, right? You can use that as an argument to take their conversation aside. Also, Brazil, as you have pointed out, Everborn, very focused on the Brazilian people. As Hamp has also pointed out, they have a unique use case to make it work there. So maybe that's why they are more likely to approve it there. Where I do think there's a little bit of hay here is their reasons, their rationales, their ultimate findings have such talking points that literally are like, and I know everyone has said this to me before. It's either giving Microsoft good talking points to use against others, or Microsoft gave this to them and they regurgitated it back. But needless to say, whether Lena, and this is how I'm looking at it, and this is why I think it's so interesting. As you guys have pointed, Lena Khan is on a mission, right? And she will do what she wants to do, as is the CMA. Right. I think the CMA is an even bigger threat than Lena Khan is, because they look at Microsoft the way Facebook is looked at in America. They don't like big tech, evil tech. They try to break evil tech apart. And now they have a second bite at that apple. So I honestly think that the CMA is probably a bit more tumultuous than everywhere else. But for the small Brazilian organization that has, as Fuzzy has pointed out, has done all their research and put such interesting points on the board, I find that it'll be hard to dismantle these talking points, even in the other areas where the equation might be different, like in the EU, obviously, in the UK and other places. The equation for why these decisions were made by Brazil will obviously be different because of different people, different priorities, different games are a priority that are popular there and whatnot. But still, at the end of the day, specifically points 4, 5, and 6 are very hard to argue against. It doesn't matter what location you're in. It makes it like I would love to hear the counter argument that is earnest and actually, proper, that counteracts 4, 5, and 6. But Everborn Saga, let's hear your take on this. I know you've been reading this thing like forward to back. There's far more to even read than these 6 points that have been made. I know you read through the whole thing.
Hey,
I'm sorry, Hamp.
Can I jump in before Everborn goes?
Yeah.
Just
please,
so I can throw
go.
some things out that he can tear apart if he so chooses.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So I don't necessarily have counters to 4, 5, and 6. What I would say that I would be very wary of is the high potential that in the UK, in Europe, and here, that a lot more will be looked at in terms of Microsoft's positioning in the cloud environment and its direct head-to-head competition with Amazon and
Google.
I don't, and this is not to say, quite frankly, I think the conspiracy theories that I see out there that Microsoft did things intentionally to take down Stadia because of the cloud pay, I think those are ridiculous. Yes. But I think Microsoft's ability to leverage its cloud infrastructure as the number 2 player in that market across mobile and console will be a thing that will be looked at, because I think there's more emphasis on leveraging your adjacencies in those markets to engage in practices and behaviors that are arguably looked at as anti-competitive.
And you are absolutely correct on that point. And I would have agreed with you on that until Google did what Google did. And I think context will matter there, but you're absolutely point, because what Google did, it will bring it to the forefront. You're 100% right. We'll see how they dismantle that. Go on.
I have been going through the document. I'm not completely finished with it, but I am actually reading through the entire 30-something pages or 300 paragraphs, piece by piece. And they actually do address the sort of cloud gaming market. I don't know if the EU and CMA will look at it in the same way, but they pointed out that is still an ancillary thing, because both Microsoft and Sony had to include their cloud gaming as a part of their subscriptions, because that market as it is today is so small. So is it material enough to say that we need to block this whole deal over it? Who knows, right? And I also do think that each regulatory jurisdiction seems to be making a bigger stink out of different parts of it. As far as what we've heard publicly from the FTC, it seems like they were very focused on what happens with the workers, which is strange to me, because I don't know if that is within the FTC's purview to look at
within their scope.
In terms of competition.
Anyway, they've been dethroned on that, so that's no need.
Right, because the CWA has entered into a contract with Microsoft, and I do think they've been particularly quiet. That could be they're getting their ducks in a row. But one thing to think about with the US, which is very interesting, they have been sort of publicly embarrassed by Amazon with the MGM deal that they tried to block.
I was just talking about that with somebody in the chat. Yes, absolutely.
An article just came out that said that, because everyone's worried about the Within deal that they're attempting to block now for Facebook, and somehow someone leaked and from the staff that the staffers disagreed with the blocking of the Within deal. And I don't think
just common sense.
Yes. Sure. And
that deal was on shaky ground from jump.
That's a Reuters report. And I think that that's intentionally leaked by, I don't think that leaks for no reason. That's all I'm saying.
Oh yeah. I agree with you. It speaks to the idea that Khan is kind of on a mission, and she's trying to co-opt the process to get, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
I don't want to assign whatever to her. I just want to talk about the FTC as a whole. So if we look at the Within deal, which I don't know if Facebook is going to think that that's worth going to court over.
No, it's not worth it.
But I do think it's one. It
shouldn't be a court situation
if they go to court.
Situation. Yeah, absolutely.
And they may do it just because it'll set a bad precedent. I don't know, and I don't think that they're going to have any luck dismantling the, if post facto dismantling of WhatsApp and Instagram from Facebook. I just don't think that that's going to be a thing that's happened.
It's too far gone at this point. Yeah.
So those are sort of 3 high-profile swings and misses, and we may say that they were effectively able to block the NVIDIA ARM deal, but that would have. I don't think that applies to ABK, because the NVIDIA ARM deal would be like Microsoft buying Sony. I don't think it's in the same level to cause concern. And I'm not saying this means nothing. I'm just saying I don't know where the FTC is going to go, and they've been curiously quiet. That could be because they're getting their ducks in a row to make the case against it. But I entirely wouldn't be surprised that Microsoft is doing everything they can behind the scenes to sort of bend over backwards to the FTC to say, hey, we're the good guys. maybe we can be a model for how these things work. And I'm not saying that that's true. I am saying that that's what Microsoft would try to pitch. So that's one thing. I wouldn't be surprised if we hear that the FTC will let this go. And the FTC has not signaled that they give one shit. That's my second one. They have not signaled that they give one poop about where Call of Duty goes. Yes. And the US has not really signaled anything like that. The US is normally more pro-business than the EU.
They're more conservative by far.
Yeah,
the EU
so I don't think the US is going to have issues around exclusivity. I think it's going to be more of promises in terms of not firing employees and maybe price raises and things like that. Now,
for, real quick, everyone, for our visual viewers, for audio listeners who are not watching, I have posted the website. Basically, the the Microsoft indoctrination attempt to tell you what we're about. Stop listening to Jim Ryan. This is what we're saying.
With this website, I really think it's just about establishing a timeline.
Oh yeah, it's a talking point. It's PR. That's what this is.
There's a lot of FUD out there and a lot of detractors to the deal. And I'm not saying there shouldn't be detractors, but I think this is Microsoft setting their own narrative.
This is their Surface. Yes, this is their Surface for Windows.
It's a cheat sheet for what they want to say. Anyway. Now, also people are researching this. I'm
by the way, here you go, Everborn. You were like, why isn't it on the site? It's small, but it's there.
Nice. Continue. No, but I am pretty sure that the people investigating this, they're going to do Google searches, and this will be one of the things they come across. So I don't think this is for nothing. I don't think this is just for us or anything.
Oh, it's public PR.
Yes, it's dotting an I, crossing a T. And I hope we talk about that EU interview because I do have a specific angle. But anyway, back to what we're talking about. Brazil approves it, zero concessions. And what's super interesting there to me is that is the first place Sony, or we heard about anyway, because a lot of these things are happening, but in the background, that's the first place we heard that Sony went to complain about this. Right. And that's where a lot of the talk and a lot of the lying and stop snitching. And that's where all that came from the public Brazil documents. And the place where Sony complained there, where they are number one in the market, they say this is not going to materially affect the market. It may affect you, but we don't care. That's not our job.
Take on it.
We want to know that competition can exist. Not necessarily that this is a static,
it has to exist. That's right.
Market, and we don't define competition by the market leader company's dominance or a static market share. Now, where I think again each jurisdiction is going to have different things that they care about, but what I do think is something that's should be noted is that Sony has an even larger market share in the UK and Europe than they do in Brazil. Xbox is a little bit more competitive there. So if Brazil says, hey, you are number one here, and so what if someone gets closer to you or maybe even surpasses you? How does the CMA and the EU look at it in terms of
you have
an even larger market presence here? Now,
they can use that talking point to help them on that path with others. That's exactly what I meant.
Another thing to consider in the document, it's not in your 6 points that you showed, but elsewhere in that document,
there's another document. Yes,
they point out that Call of Duty is a major seller, right? If you look at the top 20 games of the last 10 years, it is a major seller. However, if you look at that top 10 or top 20 games, every game that is in there is a multi-platform game, right? So and I think you spoke to this, Hamp, if Call of Duty were to go exclusive, the odds are that it won't be the same market mover that it is today, right? So you can't really make that argument. And again, I do think that effectively what Sony's real concern is we can have the exclusive discussion, but I don't think that's the real concern. I think their real concern is if Xbox is more, or Microsoft is more able to more effectively compete, and they either grab some market share. Let's say it's back in the 360 PS3 days where they're neck and neck, 84, 86 million, right? I don't think Sony can secure some of the same third-party deals that they're able to do today because the Microsoft ecosystem will be too large to ignore. And so
now you tap into why they are so like hell bent on keeping COD, because it means something beyond just the dollars and cents.
So if Microsoft through this acquisition is able to move over enough casuals, increase their share of the market to a point where they can't be easily ignored, or third-party exclusives become more expensive for Sony to procure, then they only can rely really on their first-party output. And all their first-party output now is designed, as the bangers, as they say, but they're mostly single-player games where, okay, you're going to get those sales, but you don't get the recurring revenue of microtransactions. And they can't just say, I'm going to start introducing a ton of microtransactions in the next God of War or PlayStation, because people would turn against it. So they have to make that shift, and that really is what their biggest fear there is. It's not a dominant Microsoft, but a more competitive Microsoft, because that makes it more difficult for them to do what they do.
For them
you
to
can't
continue
you
to
can't do that
lowball
Fortnite. You can't do that Fortnite crossplay tax if you're not the market leader.
If you're not the market leader, yes, that's right.
So,
that's right.
So, but now with the CMA and the EU, COD is a much more important title in those regions. And I wonder if the CMA's purview is going to look at COD exclusivity, while the FTC is going to look at workers and prices, and the EU is going to look at cloud and data. Because that's what it seems like what's happening based on.
And real quickly to that point of yours, Everborn, do you think that's just serendipitous how that happened, or did they all kind of sit down and go, okay, you take this piece, I'll take this piece? Because it seems a little too convenient that they're all approaching it from a different aspect of the game. Like, it seems like it's a calculated effort by a group of regulatory bodies saying, okay, well, we can't do this all by ourselves, so we'll take this piece, you take that piece. So it seems to me. Am I mistaken here?
I'll just throw it on that. I think just
is it serendipitous?
I think it's just happenstance. I mean, U.S. agencies can't collaborate and work together.
Officially, it cannot be done. But how can they serendipitously? It's very unusual that it's kind of how it's all working out.
But I think it speaks back to how each of these companies has a different commercial base, has a different dynamic, has different regulations that companies have to operate under, has different evolutions of where technology is going, right? When I bring up that mention of cloud, right? Cloud is not as regulation of cloud competitiveness is not as big a deal in Brazil and Saudi Arabia, for instance, as it is in the United States and Europe. In the United States, where we just recently had Microsoft lose the Jedi contract, right?
Yes.
Due to an Amazon protest. That is a huge amount of money and a huge amount of market share that would have tipped the balance in cloud in comparison to where Amazon has for a decade, had a lockdown on all government cloud operating expenditures for C2S. And so those things I think are more sensitive, right, in these regions and speak to how these things are going to play out. And then on top of that, you introduce the personalities, right, where Lena Khan has certain things. And not only Lena Khan, but right, the overall U.S. government disposition where
the sentiment these days is kind of the pendulum is swinging the other way from where it was a couple years ago.
Right. Yes. Well, where there's a feeling that there were a lot of missed opportunities, right? That maybe Facebook shouldn't have been allowed to.
They allowed too much to slide, so now we have to make an example of them.
Yeah. Right. So I think these things are going to play out a little differently. So I won't go as far as Everborn maybe feels on how the dominoes are going to fall, where Microsoft is going to be allowed to buy Activision, and then suddenly, right, the market shift competitiveness is going to swing, and unit sales are going to be different. Yeah. From the regulatory body position, right, I think where these other bodies will look at things downstream of people making their decisions is that I think the things that Ryan has brought up and the things that Sony have brought up are valid concerns, right, to be looked at and scrutinized. Not saying that they're right, or not saying that they are reasons to block the deal, but are definitely things that require a vast amount of due diligence and a vast amount of consideration of how these things are going to extrapolate down the road. I think the FTC's concern on labor practices, right, is still valid in terms of its impact on the competitive market, right? That if you are able to basically drive how a large part of labor equity in terms of setting salaries across the industry, right, to a greater extent than another competitor, such that it becomes the baseline, I think that's a valid concern. So I think as these things evolve, we're still going to see people scrutinize these things in accordance with their commercial models, their financial regulatory cultures, things that are of national concern. I've mentioned before that I think these things are also going to play out depending on how Microsoft is seated, both in terms of government procurement and how much dependency there is on a given government on various services that Microsoft provides. I think it's also going to play differently in nations where when Microsoft deploys Xbox cloud gaming to handsets and then has available certain telemetry, because people tend to set mobile device permissions on the default and not actually restrict and strangle them.
Ridiculous.
Right.
But continue.
I think places like, say, Egypt, that has a larger concern about how it monitors its citizenship and has problems with uprisings and things like that. I think that will also be of various concern, right? Because Microsoft is a big player, as we've seen in the Ukraine, with directly participating in security operating centers and monitoring the cybersecurity.
They're directly helping the Ukraine fight in the war right now. They're directly assisting them.
So to your point, though, Hamp, I think that's super important, because I don't think anyone, including the regulators, wants this to go to court. So the question is, can diplomacy work in terms of, we'll give you whatever you want, just let's get this through. So I don't believe for a second that the US, EU, CMA, and I don't know why none of us are talking about China, because I feel like that's going to be another huge thing there, and we can talk about that in a second. But Microsoft does have a lot of government contracts. Microsoft does want to be seen as a good corporate citizen. So I think as long as it's not something like divestiture, and we talked about that a little bit in the DM and in the green room, Kate, we talked about, as long as it's something not something like divestiture or blocking the deal, Microsoft kind of does whatever they want.
Whatever they want, yes, and you can't
whatever the regulators want. I mean,
sure, but the reason why I'm still of the mind that it's still very back and forth is, you can't set a bad precedent of we'll let you buy it, but then we'll put stipulations on how you use it. So we'll see where that goes, but that part of it is very interesting. Like, there are those who are like, oh, it'll be done, but they will be forced to keep it off of Game Pass or something. I will love to see how that works, because that really sets a very interesting precedent that I don't think people want to have continue.
There's another thing that's super important, and Cade talked about this a little bit, where they said, and I think it's in that point number 5, after if you could bring that back up. It's after the line about individual companies, right? Yep. So if you look at the second sentence, after all, we cannot lose sight of the fact that the holder of legal assets protected by whatever law that is effectively a law that's kind of like a copyright or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Copyright or trademarking something, right? So the idea is, do we want to be in the business of telling the owner of a particular asset what they have to do with it?
That's right. Bad precedent.
Because that's going to call into question a lot of like copyright and other things like that.
Yes.
So yes, absolutely. I think that's a point that we're talking about COD exclusivity and the effects of it, but do these regulators anywhere want to get into that kind of thing in terms of how long or things being in perpetuity telling them? So I really, and like I said, I think the concessions are going to come from places that we don't kind of realize, and they may seem onerous to us. I don't know if we're gonna get much in the way of like
proper real. Hey, Call of Duty, this and that and the other.
This person, because again, you're telling someone to do with.
You're telling somebody to spend $70 billion.
Forget about that.
What I have. Do with it.
I own, the trademark and the copyright for Everborn. Can someone, and I know it's not a market mover like COD, but the law is the law, right?
Not yet, bro.
Not yet. We're trying
Continue.
to we're trying to get that Netflix deal. But do you affect copyright law when you start telling people where they have to put things? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah,
I don't think you affect copyright law, but I think you definitely tread into waters of what that regulatory body is supposed to do. Right? We talked about the FTC kind of overstepping its bounds, and I think that's the area you wade into. I think the reason we're not talking about China is because I don't know all the ins and outs of this, but generally U.S. companies aren't allowed to publish directly into China. They have to go through a company incorporated and homed in China, which for Call of Duty was Tencent Games.
Yeah,
and actually Call of Duty Online just shut down recently. So part of the problem with deploying in China is, right, you have to go through a Chinese company to deploy the game, but on top of that, the Chinese government is very frivolous about deciding, that maybe they've allowed a game to come through, but then backtracking and decided that game can no longer be made available in China. So I think
didn't they just recently allow even consoles to be in China, like with approval as recently as this generation? I thought, right?
Yeah,
very good point.
Yeah, I believe so. So one of the things where I will agree, with Everboard and maybe some other people as well, right? The whole thing about this is again, I go back to, like, I don't think Jim Ryan has done anything that he shouldn't do. I think he's making every effort to prevent this from happening, which is what I kind of think his fiduciary responsibility is as CEO of PlayStation. However, right, when you're the big dog on the block, right, and you own the largest market share, it's a very difficult argument to wage to say, hey, don't allow somebody to come alongside me and establish parity from a competitive perspective. Right, that's an argument that somebody might say, I don't know that I'm going to prevent that from happening. I would argue maybe kind of what we're seeing from a regulatory perspective is we're seeing
exactly what Brazil's saying. Yes.
Right, we're seeing the skill-based matchmaking, right, of the console market. Right,
that's right.
You're ranked high. You get to play against other players that are of similar size and similar capability as you.
Yes.
You don't just get to be a
stop
smurf.
Complaining and go compete. Like,
exactly.
And by the way, for those who don't understand, that is the title of this episode. Stop complaining. Only in Brazilian, in Portuguese, because Brazilians speak Portuguese. So that's why it says stop complaining, Sony. That's what that says.
So
anyway,
but it will be super interesting to see how this plays out. And above all, and I keep telling people this, I genuinely don't care about COD. I care about the campaigns. I like the content. I'm interested in Diablo, but again, this deal is not really. I have no emotional attachment to this deal, other than
we know you want Sega.
Wait, I'm coming there. I'm coming to the Sega thing.
Here we go.
The only emotional attachment I have to this deal is that I want to see the Twitter meltdown when it is official. I need to see those tears. And
Blood in the
can't wait for it. So that's it. I genuinely don't care. I want the deal to be done so that they can move on to the real prize, which is that of Sega. If you told me they lost Activision tomorrow, but they were able to move on Sega the day after that, I would say that was a win. But that's just me.
So real quick, a quick aside. I posted this thing in on the visuals here, which shows available U.S. streaming and gaming services. This was posted by Paris Lilly, so shout out to him. A quick aside: did we know that Facebook had a streaming service?
Yeah, they have their games on through their app and stuff like that. So I guess that's that free aspect of it. But
so I guess I've successfully like remove Facebook from my ecosystem so much that I didn't even know this existed. Amazing. Okay.
But yes. Again, the thing to know, who's the most expensive?
Yeah.
So, and I think this is going to, again, I know they're looking at other avenues and we don't want to talk about it like it's checkers when they're playing chess, but you have to, and I'm trying as best I can to take all emotion out of this, right? Mm-hmm. Can you, and I think Brazil agrees with me here, when you are the market leader in this space, you literally you charge the highest of all your competitors, right? You have
give them the least value for the
right.
for the
value is subjective, but
it's subjective, sure.
You again, your titles don't go into this thing day and date, right? You charge $70 for your games. You are using lock-in tactics, because I know there's a network effect question, but it's literally Sony with the networking effect, where through their dominance in the market, they're able to secure more deals, which makes it harder for their competitors to secure deals. They come out with a service, it's more expensive. They raise the price on their console. They do these things. How do you agree with them that they should be entitled
to continue doing it and squash the other guy?
and you say that is going to promote competition? Yep. Shouldn't I know it sounds like I'm being emotional, but isn't the nature of competition having someone that can actually stand toe to toe with Sony, so that they'll have to be able to compete on merits and not utilizing their market share? Hamp, what do you think?
Compete on merit and not what's the word? What's the term that is used when they carve different jurisdictions just to make sure that Republicans all get gerrymandering? That's it. That's what they're doing right now.
So
go ahead, Hamp.
Yeah. Tell me what you think about my assessment.
So one thing before I get to that. So this chart, just to point out a couple variances. It seems like the top tier of pricing for Microsoft is displayed on there. Just to be clear, and it may just be a time thing, because I think some of these things came into being.
But the top tier is not the same across the board.
Right. So there's a top tier GeForce Now where you get an RTX 3080 that's $20 per month. I would also say this pricing focuses on the monthly pricing, whereas that per month pricing
is different.
Proration shifts, right, when you go annual.
Absolutely.
So just some minor differences,
which is absolutely true. And to get back to the point before we do though, on this list here, as a person who I can say, with the exception of Facebook Gaming, I've tried every single one of these. The best one, technically, GeForce Now. The most bang for your buck, except for Game Pass, Luna. Believe it or not. Continue, sir.
Yeah, and so to Everborn's theory, I mean, I'm not sure if I'm able to answer it directly. I think maybe I'm kind of platforming off, what he was talking about. So I get what Everborn's saying, I think, but one of the things I come back to is, and I've mentioned, hey, Sony's the big dog. It's really kind of weird for them to be complaining. I get that, but then I would also say, there's really not any excuse for Xbox to not be the market leader, right? Yeah. Let's take the Activision deal off the table. Right. $2 to $3 trillion company, available technology out the wazoo, number 2 cloud provider in the country, right? Advanced research and development and technology that vastly exceeds anything that Sony could possibly muster, right? Really, the only reason that those things haven't necessarily been leveraged is because for years, prior to Phil's elevation to reporting directly to Satya, I don't know that all those strengths were leveraged. And maybe arguably some of them weren't leveraged because Microsoft had an antitrust and a competitive fear of raising those fears on the government, right? Okay, regardless. But pound per pound, strength for strength, right?
They had no excuse not to be market leader. Absolutely.
Right. Microsoft is a heavyweight. Sony is a bantamweight.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah. So I think the best example I've heard mentioned on that is it's the equivalent of a gnat to an atom bomb. Like that's what that is, right there.
Right. So there's really, so even without the Activision deal, there's really no reason why these additional strengths. There's no reason why increased synergies couldn't happen between PC gaming and Xbox gaming. There's really no reason why there's not an Xbox handheld that has been made. We talk about increasing your footprint and vertical integration behind fielding multiple devices. Really no reason. And so yes, I feel like Sony doesn't really have a dog in the fight, right? Any reason to cry in the bucket about their competitive stance because they are the market leader. They've been the market leader for 20 plus years. As I've said before, they've quite frankly kind of whooped Xbox at least 2 out of 3 generations in terms of unit sales. And the third generation, they have walked them down after Microsoft had not only a 1-year production head start, but also a winning of the hearts and minds of gamers head start, right? In terms of just how they spoke to the Xbox 360 launch in comparison to kind of the arrogance that Sony showed in the PlayStation 3 launch. So, at the end of the day, all I care about is that there's plenty of games and more games available for all consumers across multiple platforms. My only interest in seeing how this thing goes is just it's, as I was saying, I think I said to Everborn, maybe I said to HD Gamer, I love watching these things unfold. So I kind of look at it like I'm Uatu, right, and just kind of watching it unfold and not interfering, right, which is why I don't make choices on platforms. I just buy every single one and play wherever I want to.
Makes it easy, right? Absolutely.
It's like I told you, Hamp, it's corporate Game of Thrones. I love it. Whoever wins is super fascinating, right?
Yes. But you know what, Hamp, your point that you made there about Microsoft having no excuse, such a good point. So if they were to just fold up right now, nobody could ever look at them like they look at Sega and go, "Oh, Sony, you did." No, they chose not to compete, and that's where they are. Well, exactly.
Looks like with Stadia.
That's where I was going. Exactly the same thing with Google. They have every single thing to their back. They chose to step out the game, right? So that idea of that can be used as a cudgel against Microsoft in this deal. All you need is the context, and it kind of that stuff flies away. But very, very good point. Please continue.
And let me swing back to VR since we talked about PSVR too, right? And
you can button this up, yes.
And this is an example, right? Kind of so Windows mixed reality, right? Microsoft was able to get all of the PC manufacturers who are tied at the hip with them with Windows to create Windows mixed reality devices.
A first round, yes,
right,
yes.
Which were available for a much lower cost on the market in comparison to Oculus, Vive, and then Index, right? Eventually was able to get Valve to also help them in making
Samsung's outing was way better than most devices out there. Samsung's device is amazing.
There were a couple of headsets, that one and the HP headset, right?
And the HP headset. At the time, I happened to be working for HP at the time when they made that headset. It was a great headset. I don't work for them anymore.
Continue. Right. So now where do we go? We go to all these devices coming out, available for cheaper. Maybe not quite as performant as some of the other devices, but definitely in the ballpark, right? What is the natural next step in my head would be to make them all compatible with Xbox, which also runs on x86, operates on top of the DirectX abstraction layer.
I have been waiting for that forever, bro.
Right. But what do they do? They don't do that. They don't do that territory to Sony and the PlayStation.
There is no technical reason why this should not be compatible with Xbox. None. Absolutely.
And I respect the decision. I understand that they probably did pros and cons and a cost benefit analysis and came out the other side. However, what I go back to is that was a choice you made. And you could have.
So if it doesn't work out for you, don't blame anybody else but yourself.
You know what I think that has to do with? I think they were burned so bad by the Kinect that they do not want to delve into another peripheral add-on. And I think they've got so many. It's super weird, or it would have been super weird if they say, there's that meme, Xbox has no games, which is complete nonsense, right? But that meme persists with troglodytes. If you're not,
which you called yourself among a couple minutes ago.
I'm a different kind of troglodyte.
Continue, sir.
Different class. But my point is, you can do peripherals like that when you are comfortably in the lead, right? When you're trying to catch up in terms of releasing your first party content, that is job number one. And until you've completed job number one, and again, I'm just talking about their first party. I'm not talking about all the games. There are a ton of games to play. But they have to get that. They've got to be comfortably in the lead before they can focus on additions to the core thing. And I think they want to keep the core straight and not get pulled off in other directions while they're still trying to fix the main thing.
I get you, but I think you also understand my perspective when I say you made the choice to be bearish instead of being bullish, right? Yeah, you had the money, you had the cash, you had the market position, you have the talent, right? I understand, despite all that, you choose to make other choices, but then I can't go, well, they did that because they had this impediment, or they couldn't purchase enough VR lenses, or because prices on CB. Like there are valid reasons why things become blockers, like PlayStation, Sony increased the price of its consoles. I veritably think that there's reasons for that. There are economic conditions that drive that.
I think. Well,
but I can't say that for Microsoft.
I think you haven't heard my conspiracy theory on this.
We're not going into new conspiracy theories.
No. This
we're gonna keep it tight. Remember, we're almost at the end of the show.
My conspiracy theory is that they raised the prices on the PlayStation as a mechanism to subsidize the cost of VR, so that they.
No way. Because that means
I believe it.
Money at the table. Heck no. That means look at us, magnanimous PlayStation. We're gonna sell you the whole thing for $350.
Right. When you see that $349 price, I was right, and I want.
I will see the $349 price, and then each controller will be $100 separate dollars. But okay, let's continue.
Please, I'm sorry.
So you're saying they're going to sell PlayStation VR 2 like Halo Infinite gives out Battle Pass awards?
Yes,
exactly. Give you one shoulder pad at a time.
Yeah. the VR headset is going to come with cat ears.
Oh.
But no, I on the VR point, I 100% agree with your position. There's no reason why they are where they are. What they made that choice, and making that choice for better or worse is what it is. But you can then later on scream to regulatory bodies if someone comes and eats your lunch because of those decisions that you've made. Right?
So I'm going to agree a little bit here.
Okay.
Although I understand why they didn't, and I don't think that they.
I agree too. I understand as well. It's just still a bad call.
Right. They can't. They need to be 100% focused on putting out.
And you know what? One thing though, Everborn, and I've said this multiple times in the show. This is what it keeps teaching me new lessons. You live and learn. Money does not equate like success. Like just because they have all the quote unquote monies in the world, they're still focusing on, we got to get our core right first before we even think about, even though you would think they got all the money in the world, they could just split multiple teams and you go do the VR stuff. You go somehow, some way, 343, known as the greatest, most well-funded, the most well-funded, take that first part out, the most well-funded studio, still somehow is unable to release maps for reasons, right? We have valid reasons, but for reasons you'd think that resources are the solution, but more and more they're teaching you that money doesn't automatically equal, more hands in the pot, more content.
This is why this is the one thing. Although I'm lukewarm on the Activision IP, but I think what's more important here is the talent that Microsoft is acquiring. Because again, you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have the talent that sort of can ship on time and create those things for you, it doesn't really mean much. It doesn't amount to much, right? And the talent that they are amassing to make even new IP, that to me is exciting, right? True. And I think that they had been having a hard time. And again, some of this is their own fault. They do heavily rely on contractors. And I do sometimes understand why you would do that from a business perspective. It is very expensive. And the reason you hear Sony games have, $200 million budgets, part of that is because they keep everyone on staff all the time, right? And if you're not pumping out a game every year or every 2 years from the studio, but you are on staff and you're only putting out games every 3 to 6 years, the production cost skyrockets because again, you're paying all those salaries in between all those releases. And so if you can bring in contractors as needed, it actually brings down your, what do you think about, am I off on that, Hamp? Because I think that's the reason for, other than tax reasons.
Well, my only pushback on you guys, right? So it sounded like Kay was saying what we often say in software development, right? Which is that 9 women can't make a baby in 1 month. Right, I can't keep piling more and more developers up into space and recover. Right, the 343 problem,
and they keep teaching us that.
Right,
every time.
Yep, the 343i problem. Right, say whatever it is. Right, bad history on them getting to where they are, but I can't just throw more developers at Halo Infinite and expect that problem to fix itself. Right. However, my one pushback on that is 9 women can't make a baby in 1 month. However, I can,
the one righteous one can do it
right, but I can fund 3 orphanages, right?
True.
And turn and make it so that they don't need parents. Right?
Absolutely.
And I can build, and in Microsoft's case, I can build clones in AI, right? and have the equivalent number of sentient beings.
We're taking that analogy all the way.
Right. Yeah. But my point is that, right?
And one guy can father 9 babies in a month.
That's a whole different conversation, brother. A whole different conversation.
Watch me. So my point is just, I go back to, I will give certain leniencies to Microsoft, right? The past is the past, and they can't recover, right? Necessarily, it can't make up for every single mistake. However, I will still say, at the end of the day, they still had a Super Bowl, right, winning team and resources, and before the salary cap, they still had the Dallas Cowboys budget, and they made choices that got them to where they were, right? They had a foothold in the Xbox 360 generation that they didn't keep up with. Some of that was personality driven. Matrick came and shot his mouth off a bunch, said a bunch of crap he didn't need to say. Why that guy was in charge, I don't get. However, right, how long do you get after the last guy goes away to blame everything on him? You get 6 months. And then after 6 months, it's all you, right? So, but I said Xbox is my preferred platform. I love playing games on Xbox. So,
and this is why we appreciate your takes, man. We should be able to come here and have conversation without there being, oh, well, this is my preferred plastic, so I have to defend them to death. No, absolutely.
We're only going to do that if Microsoft buys Sega, and then I'm full fanboy mode.
Oh, no, you're only going to
Yeah, that's you.
No, but I need to warn everybody. If that happens, you cannot take anything I say seriously.
I've already warned everybody. The minute that happens, we will be playing. You will join the Gaming Sonic podcast, and I'll just sit back here and I'll be popcorning while you just get completely disgusting on the show, and that'll be fine. Because people know that everything.
Just I can't be trusted after that happens. So,
okay, So you know what? We try to keep it tight. He has warned you, some people. The minute that deal comes out, either seek out Everborn Saga or get off the internet. One or the other. There's no middle ground. Anyway, so you know what? We have had an amazing conversation with like really introspective stuff, and I've learned a lot. I like having conversations where
I told you.
Hey, like-minded folks can disagree. People can really put thought into it, and you learn something. Your position may change, or maybe you'll find ways to make your position even stronger with the input of others. So Hamp, I really appreciate you being here, Mr. Everborn Saga and Fuzzy Belvedere. It's been an awesome conversation. I'll start with our unexpected new guest. Hamp, please tell the fine people where they can find you, all the things that you do on the internet. I'll make sure I grab all of those details from you and put them in the show notes to make sure folks can seek you out.
Well, I'll start with a caveat, like everyone said when he introduced me. If you seek me out, just be prepared to take a helping of humble pie, because I'm going to say what I say, and if you don't like it or it hurts your feelings, and there's nothing I can do about that. That being said, you can find me on Twitter under Hamp_Lee Hampton. You can find me on YouTube on the Rounding Off Infinity gaming channel, where I do my live streams. And for podcasting, you can find me on the Enough to Keep Going Weekly Games podcast on the E2KG network. That's the number 2 E2KG network on YouTube, as well as Wednesday nights as a co-host on the Basement Radio Arcade podcast with Brap at 9 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday nights.
Very, very cool. And shout out to Brap for as you know, we had a show yesterday. He was on there. I love when he debates drunk. It's always a fun time when he debates drunk. But yes, Fuzzy Belvedere, the second champion that has joined us now. Like you joined, like every time I hear Fuzzy speak, he's speaking on gaming topics, he's speaking on racing, he's speaking on just the industry. I did not know you were so technical. You have such a tech mind. I did not. Every time I hear you, I'm like, this man is pulling thoughts right out of my head. I appreciate you for being here, sir. At this point, I wouldn't even consider you a guest. You've been here multiple times. It's great to have you here, sir. Tell the people where they can find you and all the things you do on the internet this week.
Oh, just want to thank you guys for having me on, and it was awesome having a conversation with you, Hamp. I'm going to definitely try to see if I can follow you, and I'll humble pie. It is that's fine. Opposing thoughts are always a great thing because it makes you take a step back and look at the bigger picture of things. So
indeed, yes,
it's definitely a good thing to have in interactions and stuff. But man, for anybody that just wants to hear any of my ramblings on anything gaming related, car related, tech related, or anything of the sort, just follow me on Twitter at Fuzzy_Belvedere. You can also find me on the Shop Podcast later on tonight, PTK Blam's channel at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And
legendary PTK
let's
Blam.
see, I got 4 more shows. So I got the Xbox lunch break special on Mondays on Double Barrel Gaming's channel with Mr. Boomstick, and that's at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. FSP on Fun Speculations channel with Mav on his channel at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Breakfast with Boom on Friday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Once again, Double Barrel Gaming channel. And then at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can find me on Xbox Ultimate with Mav and the Fun Speculation family at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks again for having me, guys. It was fun.
Oh, bro, you are always welcome here. We are all kindred spirits on this show, and we enjoy adding more people to the fray. So having you and Hamp here, you guys will definitely be brought back into the fray, and we'll have more of these conversations. It's always great to chat with you guys. Mr. Everborn Saga, I know you've been kind of, life has been doing it. I haven't seen any new revisions recently. How's things going? Tell the people where they might be able to keep up with you and get some more free Al Bundys throughout.
More free shoes, as I like to call it. Everborn Saga everywhere. Like I say, especially everbornsaga.com if you wanted to get into the books that we produce. If you're into fantasy, anime, manga, Everborn Saga is where you will go. But more importantly, the game is still in production, waiting on animation. We're supposed to have a large animation dump this week, and I promise you, when that comes in, I'm going to live stream the integration of those spine assets into the Unity project. Awesome. So you guys will be able to see that. The animation is taking a lot longer than I thought and hoped, but we are chugging along.
We've heard it. What did they say? Game development is difficult. We've heard that.
Right. Actually, you know what? Let me show you something.
Okay, real quick. Yes.
All right, real quick. Let me see if I can show you guys something. I'm going to share my screen.
While we outro, yes.
All right. So share screen, and
for those of you who are still here with us, 88 folks still here with us towards the end of the show. We appreciate you. I see Beast Mode 10 correctly pointing out we're over 100 plus views for a couple weeks now. We are so proud. Thank you guys so much. This is awesome. Here is Mr. Everborn Saga showing us. Ooh. All right, so this is the HD assets.
Yeah, these are the spine assets. So you see, you attach the skins to the different bones, right? And then you sort of move the bones, and you can add weights to them, so they, you can do funky things without having to draw every frame. So this is just the rig that we got set up, which is the hardest part. Now the animator is doing cutouts for all of the images that that are going to be needed for all the animations that we have. So
I keep saying it, brother. We need some live streams, maybe a Twitch stream where sometimes you're working on it. You just post it. You post your Twitch. I'm gaming. Come check it out. This is the stuff.
We actually, fun fact, I did a live stream, but we had to cut it short because with the animator where we were talking about the process and he was working through it. He was doing cutouts, but we cut it short after a few minutes because we couldn't get the audio working. So we were kind of talking. But this is it. You can see this is a lot more expressive. You can see the movement. And these are things you couldn't really Unity do with the sprite sheet. So the attack animations, walk animations, and this is not shaded yet. So it's going to be a lot more detailed when it comes through. So
cool. When
progress
it happens,
is happening
brother,
slowly but
let
surely.
me know. Let's promote. Let's get more folks to see what you're doing. It's very cool that you're still grinding away at it, and I want more folks to see it. Like you said, maybe inspire some to take a stab at it themselves. So this is really cool. Let us know when you're starting in earnest, and we'll start promoting. Let folks know to check out your stuff. But yes, thank you so much for being here. At this point, we're at the bottom of the episode. We still have so many folks in here. Thank you so much, audio listeners, video watchers, YouTube watchers. We're getting better and better all the time. We always have such great both content creators and community members in our chat rooms, being a part of the conversation. It's always great to have this conversation with you guys. Helps me start off my weekend right. Now I got to go get out of here and go deal with some kids. So it's been fun. I've really enjoyed having such a great conversation.
Yeah, I really want to thank Fuzzy and Hamp for
yes,
for
100%.
This week. You guys
thank
really
you guys so much.
Classed up the joint. Unlike when Slow-Mo's here.
Stop it! That is uncool, sir. I don't appreciate that. But Hamp, I sincerely appreciate you being here. We will definitely have you back on again. Great conversation with you, sir. And of course, Fuzzy Belvedere as well. For the aforementioned slanderous one, Mr. Everborn Saga, and myself, it's been a great conversation. We will see you guys next week. Keep it gaming, though.